Chapter 4888. Alva told him about Zi Chen's situation. If everyone left and Zi Chen was left alone in the city, it would be troublesome. How dare Rax come looking for trouble with Zi Chen? Does he want to die? Big Beard's eyes flashed coldly. He was also in the middle level of the trial, so of course he wasn't afraid of Rax. Helen tilted her head and looked at Zi Chen. Zi Chen said, "I'll go with you. I can protect myself and won't be a burden." Helen tilted her head and looked at the others. They all shook their heads, indicating that they didn't have any objections. Everything depended on their boss. After the battle, try not to run too far away. You'll be responsible for your own life. With that, Helen turned and left. Obviously, she agreed to let Zi Chen follow. Then, the group walked out of the city. Suddenly, Callio said, "You guys go first. I'll go back and get something." Helen looked back and didn't say anything. She slowed down a bit. Zi Chen also looked at Callio. It seemed that they had just heard the news like him. Alva walked on the road, muttering that he didn't rest well this time and was about to fight again. But soon, he was full of excitement. Fragment worlds are very different from other fragment spaces. It's like a world that has fallen into the void. Other than being bigger, there are more good things. "There's no such thing as having only one thing," Alva said excitedly. "In such a world, fragments above the middle level are most likely to appear. If you're lucky, you might even find a high-level fragment. Other than fragments, you might find something special, such as the inheritance of someone or a great spell. Every world has its own unique and powerful spell. Those broken worlds are the same. As long as you're lucky enough, you can find anything." Alva couldn't forget about fragments above the middle level. It seemed that it wasn't that he didn't want to break through, but that he didn't have the chance. Now that the chance was here, he also wanted to get resources to break through. Callio quickly caught up. They hadn't reached the city gate yet. Alva asked him what he had taken, and he said that he had taken a fragment. Alva laughed and scolded him for putting the fragment in his room. He wasn't afraid that someone would steal it. After leaving the city, Zi Chen saw that many teams had already gathered outside. Each team had a different number of people, and they each occupied a place. Helen led everyone to the side. Zi Chen saw many people looking at him. Most of these gazes were filled with ridicule, but there was no malice in them. Only a few gazes were filled with hostility. Zi Chen once again saw the person called Seuss. From the moment he appeared, Seuss had been staring at him. Zi Chen suspected that Seuss was looking for him because of Seuss. Zi Chen did not see Rax. He was not in the crowd. "Helen, I heard that it's very dangerous this time. Do you want to team up?" A man wearing a green robe and carrying a long sword on his back walked over with a smile. He looked like a scholar. "No need." Helen shook her head and refused decisively. The man who was rejected did not stop. He walked straight to Helen and said in a low voice, "I heard that the broken world we're going to is related to the immortal spell realm. It's very dangerous, but there are also many benefits. Everyone is worried that we'll be surrounded by enemies, so they're all trying to form alliances." Helen shook her head again. "No need. I'm used to leading a team. If there's danger, we'll retreat." The man in the green robe smiled and did not continue to pester her. He said some other things, and Helen responded indifferently. At the back, Awol transmitted his voice. "That guy is called Lu Qing. He's like a mangy dog. He used to be in our team, but he left to create a small team. When Boss was still in the Heaven's Chosen Realm, he already had a crush on Boss, but he only dared to do it secretly. But after Boss's cultivation level dropped, this guy thought that his chance had come. He started to have thoughts about Boss. Was our team very big in the past? Apart from the members of this team, Zi Chen could only recognize 3 other people, but 2 of them were actually from Helen's team. The team isn't big, but Boss is beautiful and kind. She takes good care of the newcomers. So many people have come and gone over the years. Alva pointed out the number of people to Zi Chen. There were dozens of people, which surprised Zi Chen. He turned to look at the city gate. Lax walked out alone. Suddenly, a powerful aura appeared. The void was forcibly torn open by a force. A man in a black robe walked out from the void. There was a trace of envy in Alva's eyes. He's called Black Dragon, the confidant of the city lord. He's definitely a heaven's chosen. Chen closed his eyes. At this moment, he was still comprehending the holy ancestor, hell-crushing technique. So many people had come, and most of them were in the refinement realm. It was clear that there would be danger. At this time, it was better to be stronger. Everyone, follow me into the void. After a moment, Black Dragon's voice sounded. He stretched out his hand and tore open the void. A crack with a radius of 3,000 meters appeared. One team after another entered. Helen also led everyone in. The one called Lu Qing had already left. After entering the void, the team at the front had already begun to speed up. Helen said to follow, and also sped up. Chen followed behind. Everyone wasn't moving at full speed, so he could easily keep up. Not long after, a fragment appeared in his field of vision. Even from a distance, he could still see that the fragment was like a millstone. It was nailed in the void by a strange force, illuminating this part of the void. He released his soul power, but when he approached, it was blocked by a resistance. When he was completely close, Chen was a little shocked. Compared to the world fragment with the realm spirit turtle, this one was much, much bigger. It looked like an irregular planet. There was a huge space in the fragment that was less than the size of a palm. How big was the area in front of him? No wonder all the teams were gathered here. It was because it could accommodate all of them. This is too amazing. Alva was also shocked by this scene. His expression became excited. If I'm lucky, I might be able to break through here. The others' expressions also changed. Chen noticed that Helen's emotions were also fluctuating. Perhaps she also wanted to find an opportunity to break through in this world. Everyone, according to the city lord's estimation, this should be a high-level trial world. So when you come out, each of you will have to pay 2 intermediate fragments or 20 elementary fragments. The one who spoke was Black Dragon. He stood next to the fragment, and his voice reached everyone's ears. No one had any objections. In such a huge world, if they were lucky enough, they might even be able to obtain a high-level fragment. The entrance fee of 2 intermediate fragments wasn't high. This was for the trial level, but for Chen, it was a little stressful. Alva patted Chen's shoulder. Don't worry. Boss will definitely help you. Chen wasn't worried about this problem, but he felt Alva's concern and still nodded. At this moment, everyone began to enter one after another. Helen said, "Let's go in too." Chapter 48-89. After entering the broken world, it was as if they had arrived in a complete world. This place was extremely wide and filled with lush vegetation. The air was filled with a powerful pressure. The energy of heaven and earth was rich and pure. Even if it was a broken world, its level was still higher than Chen's Tianwu world. At this moment, people were constantly descending into this world. Then, they flew in different directions in small groups. There seems to be a city over there. Let's go there. Helen looked in a certain direction. Following Helen, they flew over a mountain range. Chen saw a huge city. There used to be people living here, but now there was no one left. Dong! Before they even got close to the city, a bell rang in the distance. Layers of ripples visible to the naked eye spread out from the city in front of them. The flesh and blood of 2 people who were close to the trial realm suddenly turned into fine powder and disappeared, leaving behind eerie white bones. They fell from the sky and smashed into the ground. The ripples from the bell were still spreading, but everyone stopped and looked in front of them in shock. This scene was too exaggerated. 2 trial realm cultivators died just like that? Chen was also shocked. He hadn't even reached the trial realm. If he rashly advanced, wouldn't he die even more miserably? At this moment, The bones on the ground suddenly lit up. The two people who were supposed to be dead suddenly ran in the opposite direction. Light circulated around their bodies. The flesh and blood that had disappeared earlier reappeared. They didn't die. Everyone was shocked again. At this moment, the ripples swept past Zi Chen's body, but no danger occurred. It was like a strong wind sweeping past his body. What's going on? Alva looked in front. Is that bell warning us? Many people gathered around, but no one rashly stepped forward. Helen retracted her soul power. Those two are still alive. They just suffered a bit of shock. Their lives aren't in danger. Her eyes were still looking in front. It was obvious that she wanted to take a look inside. That bell was obviously extraordinary. At this moment, many teams were ready to move. There were many people who didn't want to miss this opportunity. Suddenly, a person rushed forward, heading straight for the center of the city. Everyone looked at that person. If he dared to move forward at this time, he was either a fool or full of confidence. Dang! The sound of the bell rang again, and layers of ripples spread out. At this time, a light shield suddenly appeared in that person's hand, forming a defensive barrier, isolating him from the shockwaves. Shwa! As the ripples swept past, the light shield's luster fluctuated and soon dimmed. As the ripples faded away, the unscathed opponent accelerated a second time. It's over. Many people's eyes lit up, and then they moved forward without hesitation. During this period of time, those who possessed defensive items took them out as soon as possible and blocked in front of them. Rays of light flickered as everyone flew towards the city. Dang! 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 The bells rang out continuously, but everyone was prepared in advance, so they were no longer afraid. During this period of time, no one died. Just as they were about to reach the center of the city, their figures suddenly fell to the ground as if they were being dragged down by a strange force. Following that, a powerful shockwave shook the area. Skeletal creatures walked out from the buildings and started attacking the intruders. There was no flesh on their bodies. Their white bones emitted sparkling light, and their strength was extraordinarily great. Caught off guard, several Trial Realm cultivators were sent flying. Let's go too. Zi Chen, you stay. After seeing this scene, Helen no longer hesitated and flew straight ahead. During this time, a jade pendant on her waist emitted a bright light, forming a protective barrier. The others followed closely behind, all taking out decent defensive items. Alva glanced at Zi Chen and said, "Be careful." "It's okay. I also have a defensive barrier." Zi Chen followed him. A ring appeared in his hand, which could be used as a form of defense. The Trial Realm defensive item had already been destroyed by Alva's punch. The bell had not sounded for a long time. Just as they were approaching the depths of the city, a powerful gravitational force suddenly came from the ground. Everyone's figures descended one after another, landing on a street. "Everyone, be careful." Helen walked in front with a knife. Suddenly, a door exploded, and a skeletal creature rushed out, grabbing at Helen, who was closest to it. The surrounding gravity suddenly changed, and the skeletal creature's momentum paused. The knife flashed past its neck. The skeletal creature's head flew up, but its body was still moving forward. It did not fall. Helen's expression did not change. The large knife in her hand swept horizontally like a stick, and with a bang, the skeletal creature was sent flying. After landing, the skeletal creature's body loosened, but it did not die. Instead, it struggled to reform its body. Bang! 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 Just as Helen temporarily dealt with the skeletal creature, more skeletal creatures rushed out of the houses on both sides of the street, instantly surrounding the group. The flowing knife appeared in Zi Chen's hand, and he slashed forward without hesitation. Mountain cutting technique. The knife flashed like a waterfall, landing on a skeletal creature. Accompanied by a powerful vibration, the skeletal creature's body was pushed back. After retreating more than 10 feet, It stabilized its body and rushed forward again. Zi-chan was very surprised that it did not scatter, so he slashed out with his saber again. This time, the knife went straight for the skeletal creature's neck. Clang! Like the sound of metal clashing, the skeletal creature retreated again. Zi-chan also retreated, no longer hoping to scatter the skeletal creature. In this place, the disadvantage of his combat strength was already apparent. The others blocked the skeletal creatures with ease. After knowing that they could not kill them, they all repelled the skeletal creatures, no longer hoping to kill them. However, Helen, who was walking at the front, continuously scattered the skeletal creatures, saving the others a lot of trouble. Zi-chan, you walk in the middle. Alva turned around and shouted. Zi-chan had been slower than the others because he had to keep slashing backward. Zi-chan nodded. At this moment, a violent energy suddenly came from the front. Dozens of skeletal creatures suddenly rushed out of a very large house, blocking the road in an instant. Between Zi-chan and Alva, there were at least a dozen skeletons blocking the way. Zi-chan! Alva shouted and rushed toward them. Don't worry about me. You guys continue to go deeper. If I can't do it, I'll go back. Zi-chan took the initiative to retreat. During this time, he repeatedly slashed out, repelling the skeletal creatures one after another. Right at this moment, a fierce aura suddenly came from behind Zi-chan. Boundless killing intent surged out from the aura. Zi-chan turned around and slashed forward with the flowing knife in his hand. A long spear was already in front of him, carrying a powerful aura. The one holding the spear was a young man. Zi-chan had seen him in Peace City when he was with Seuss. Chapter 4890. After throwing Zi-chan into the group of skeletons, the youth sneered and stood in the distance, watching the show with his spear. Piesser walked over from the distance, with 5 people beside him. Seeing the scene in front of him, he frowned slightly. The youth gestured to him, telling him not to worry. Piesser nodded and said, Since that's the case, I'll give you an official mission. After you complete it, go back and get your reward. As he spoke, Piesser threw out a jade plate. The youth caught it and smiled faintly. Killing a guy who's not even in the training realm is a piece of cake. He seemed very confident. Buzz! The flowing blade in Zi-chan's hand turned into a ray of light and slashed forward, landing on the skeletons' bodies. A clanging sound erupted and sparks flew everywhere. More skeletons approached Zi-chan and surrounded him. Zi-chan! Alva shouted. The situation on his side was not good. Suddenly, more skeletons appeared and rushed over. Helen, who was walking at the front, noticed the abnormality behind her. Her eyes were cold. You guys continue forward. She turned around and went to support Zi-chan. At this moment, there was laughter. Piesser flew over from the side. Helen, long time no see. Want to chat with me? Helen's eyes flashed with killing intent. The gravity around them suddenly changed, as if they had entered a gravitational space. Helen slashed down with her giant blade. Piesser laughed. He seemed unconcerned, but his expression was serious. He pushed his palms forward, and a light will appeared between his palms. Clang! A clanging sound rang out. He blocked Helen's attack and retreated out of the gravitational field at the same time. Piesser smiled. Helen, look behind you. At this moment, a few dozen white bone creatures appeared behind Helen and were charging towards her. Don't worry about me. I have a way to escape. At this moment, Zi-chan's voice sounded in Helen's mind. Hearing this confident voice, Helen turned around to deal with the skeletons. Piesser was a little surprised, but he did not say anything. He leaped into the distance. During this time, he turned around to take a look. Zi-chan was still surrounded by the skeletal creatures, and he was the only one facing them. It was difficult for him to deal with them. He smiled slightly and left at ease. Holding the black spear, Luan Duo was still watching. It seemed like he was waiting for an opportunity to give Zi-chan a fatal blow. Boom! Suddenly, a circular ring appeared in Zi Chen's hand. Next, the circular ring expanded in size to push the nearby skeletal creatures several zhang away. A look of surprise flashed across Lin Duo's eyes. There's actually such a method. After shaking off the skeletons, Zi Chen did not follow the team. Instead, he flew toward Lin Duo. Lin Duo smiled. Interesting. The long spear in his hand trembled, stirring up countless beams of misty light. His spear pierced into the void. The tip of the spear trembled as boundless energy surged out. In Zi Chen's vision, there were nearly 100 spear lights approaching from afar. These spear lights were not illusory, they were all real. One, a black mountain appeared in front of Zi Chen. It was like a huge mountain with a powerful aura flowing around it. It blocked in front of him. The spear lights landed on the mountain, making clanking sounds. They were all blocked. Lin Duo was surprised. A look of greed flashed across his eyes. Your cultivation level is not high, but you have a lot of good stuff. Great, these things are mine. Mountain slash. Zi Chen stood on top of the mountain and slashed down with his saber. The saber light pierced through the sky and went straight for Lin Duo. Lin Duo shook his spear and immediately broke the saber light. Your attack is too weak. Shoo! Right at this moment, Zi Chen had already arrived. His speed was beyond Lin Duo's imagination. At such a close distance, the long saber slashed toward Lin Duo's neck. Zi Chen did not believe that his neck would be as tough as those skeletal creatures. Clang! The long spear blocked the attack. The powerful shockwave forced Zi Chen to retreat several zhang. Lin Duo stood where he was with a sneer in his eyes. You overestimate yourself. The aura around his body suddenly changed, and boundless black energy surged out from his body. Vaguely, a single-horned black python appeared behind him. The black python's aura was terrifying as it stared at Zi Chen. Kid, I haven't killed anyone after reaching the training realm. You are the first. Lin Duo's aura turned black as well. It seemed like he had fused with the black python behind him. Zi Chen felt a powerful pressure. He did not dare to be careless. The black mountain returned to his side. Remember, this move is called Poison Dragon. The black python hissed and instantly disappeared into the long spear. Then, Lin Duo's aura seemed to disappear. He had also fused with the long spear. In this world, there was only this spear. Zi Chen felt a strong threat of death. The black mountain in front of him enlarged without hesitation. It was like a mountain blocking in front of him. Shoo! A black light first pierced through the black mountain and then through Zi Chen's body. There was a bloody hole in Zi Chen's chest. His vitality was quickly disappearing. Soon he became weak. His face was very pale. There was shock in his eyes. The black mountain left by Gushan was destroyed, just like that. Crack! Crack! Cracks appeared on the black mountain from the hole. Then it exploded and completely shattered. You're still not dead. Lin Duo's voice came from behind. His face was a little pale. He was very surprised. He had used up a lot of energy to use this move, but he still could not kill his opponent. Zi Chen said calmly, I almost died. It was He Feng who risked his life to save me. Lin Duo suddenly felt something was wrong. He immediately ran away. His opponent was clearly heavily injured. Although he did not know why he had such a feeling, he trusted his intuition. Buzz! The world shook. A light suddenly flew forward and covered Lin Duo's body. It was the ring that had more than 200 points. It was called Spirit Lock. The ring trapped Lin Duo, making him unable to move. In the next moment, the broken sword appeared. Like a flowing light, the broken sword instantly entered Lin Duo's sea of consciousness. When they were at close range, Zi Chen's move could even defeat Alva, let alone a guy who had just reached the training realm. Puff! The broken sword pierced through Lin Duo's sea of consciousness. It turned into a flowing light and flew to Zi-Chen's side. Luan Duo's body fell to the ground. The ring flew back to him. However, when he landed, a soul light suddenly flew out from Luan Duo's body and flew into a jade plate. In the next moment, the jade plate flew away. Zi-Chen was stunned. He was not dead. He flew forward and landed beside Luan Duo's body. He saw Luan Duo's spear. He picked it up. He lost the Black Mountain and got the spear. It could be considered as making up for his loss. Luan Duo's escape method was quite clever. That jade plate seemed to be suitable for souls to live in. Zi-Chen did not know that the jade plate was actually prepared for him by Piecer to imprison his soul. Putting away the spear, Zi-Chen looked ahead. There were more skeletons blocking his way. Puff! He could not hold it in any more. He coughed out a mouthful of blood. His breath became weaker. If the Black Mountain had not neutralized the power of the spear, he would have died. Now, there were so many skeletons blocking his way. It was impossible for the injured Zi-Chen to continue moving forward. It seemed that he could only retreat. At this moment, someone suddenly exclaimed, "There's a fragment in the room." P.S. There are 2 wrong names in 2 chapters. They have been changed. Uploaded today. Is there anyone reading Thunder Warrior in 17K? Chapter 4891. Zi-Chen, who was about to retreat, suddenly heard the scream. There was a room not far from him. Would there be a fragment in there? At this moment, Zi-Chen was tempted. He felt that he could still fight, but he had to treat his injuries first. Speaking of which, he had not suffered such a serious injury in a long time. Furthermore, he was only 1 step away from death. Following the sound, the city became even more chaotic. If he was not careful, the good stuff would be gone. Zi-Chen was anxious and decided to go in now. However, he suddenly stopped after walking for more than 10 feet. A strong aura surged from the depths of the city. Dong! Another bell rang, and layers of ripples spread out in all directions. Zi-Chen quickly took out the ring. Speaking of which, the bell had not rung for a long time. Could it be that someone had reached the depths of the city and caused the bell to ring? Suddenly, Zi-Chen widened his eyes and looked to the side. There used to be a body there. It was left behind by Luan Duo's soul after it escaped. However, as the ripples passed by, the flesh on Luan Duo's body disappeared, leaving behind only a skeleton. In the next moment, the skeleton stood up. At first, it swayed as if it was not used to it, but it soon became agile. It turned its head and looked at Zi-Chen. Both of them looked at each other. The skeleton exerted force on its legs and rushed forward. It was unknown whether Zi-Chen was too close to it, or it had some fragmented memories of its past life and knew that he was its enemy. Luan Duo blocked in front of him, and the skeleton landed on it, causing sparks to erupt. The powerful force pushed Zi-Chen back. Whoosh! At close range, Zi-Chen pulled out his sword and slashed at Luan Duo's neck. When Luan Duo's body was still alive, Zi-Chen was confident that he could chop off his head. However, it seemed that he was not so confident now. As expected, in the midst of the sparks, Zi-Chen was pushed back, but Luan Duo's neck was intact. How could this be? In a short period of time, Luan Duo's body was much stronger than before. Luan Duo's skeleton approached him again. Its hand was like a weapon that was aimed at his injured heart. Zi-Chen retreated once again. Even with his injuries, he felt the pressure of facing this skeleton. Fortunately, after using the lightning escape technique, his speed was faster than the skeleton's. Thus, Zi-Chen changed direction and entered the nearest room. Upon entering the room, Zi-Chen discovered that the place had long been destroyed beyond recognition. There was nothing decent left. There was a magic array on the floor of the hall, and a very small piece of law fragment was floating above the magic array. Zi-Chen released his perception to investigate. The array seemed to be some kind of spirit gathering array. The surrounding spirit chi was converging here. At first glance, it seemed like a person was meditating here to cultivate and refine the fragments. It was Luan Duo's skeletons chasing after them. Zi-Chin did not hesitate anymore. He reached out his hand and took the shard. After a few rounds of disillusionment, the formation below also collapsed. Holding the fragment, Zi-Chan realized that it was different from the fragments he normally obtained. This fragment was more like a combination of energy and fragments. Boom! The door exploded as the skeleton chased after him. Zi-Chen leaped and used the lightning escape technique to get out of the window. Suddenly his eyes lit up. This thing was neither a fragment nor energy. It was something like an elixir. With this discovery, Zi-Chen tried to refine it. As the energy in his body flashed, the fragment instantly turned into a pure energy and entered his body. His injuries began to recover. This discovery made Zi-Chen ecstatic. He thought that he would have to bid farewell to this place. Now it seemed that there was still hope. After this energy entered his body, it began to heal Zi-Chen's injuries as if he had swallowed an amazing elixir. Bang! The window shattered as the skeleton chased after him. Zi-Chen did not waste any more time. He directly used the broken sword and chopped off the skeleton's head. At the same time, he raised his hand and shot out a ray of energy. The energy wrapped around the head and flew away. The skeleton continued to charge forward with a fierce attack. Zi-Chen's figure flashed and dodged the attack. At the same time, the broken sword turned back and completely dismantled the skeleton. Ignoring the skeleton that was slowly wriggling and reassembling, Zi-Chen rushed forward. That small fragment allowed his heavily injured body to recover a lot. The advantage of the lightning escape technique was completely displayed at this moment. Zi-Chen almost brushed past the skeleton's body and broke into the second room. The fragments here were smaller than the ones he found before, but it was better than nothing. After Zi-Chen got it, he swallowed it in one gulp. Healing his injuries was the most important thing right now. The door was already blocked by the skeleton. Zi-Chen forced his way through the room and escaped to the other side. Then, the rumbling sound continued. Zi-Chen broke through one building after another, looking for the fragments. Not every room had fragments. If he was lucky, he could find about half of them in 10 rooms. However, as Zi-Chan went deeper, his harvest became less and less because most of them had been rummaged through. He did not know how these fragments were formed, but as he went deeper, his injuries had completely recovered. Now that Zi-Chan had maintained his full strength, he was full of confidence when he went forward again. There were fewer and fewer fragments that could be found. The bell in the depths rang frequently, and fluctuations swept across his body. This forced Zi-Chen to wander around the periphery. Other than some fragments, there was only the formation pattern on the ground left. Since his injuries had been healed, Zi-Chen was not afraid of those skeleton creatures at all. The ring expanded into a huge circle, surrounding the entire room. All the skeleton creatures that were close to it would be forced back. Zi-Chen stood in the room and silently looked at the formation pattern on the ground. Above the formation pattern, there was a fragment the size of a fingernail floating. The spirit chi between heaven and earth was gathering towards the formation pattern. In Zi-Chen's perception, the formation pattern was condensing this energy a second time. Finally, it gathered at the top and formed this unique fragment. This was a formation pattern that could create fragments. It was a miracle. Zi-Chen did not pay much attention to it before, but the more he looked at it, the more shocked he was. Compared to the fragments here, the value of the formation pattern was obviously greater. Zi-Chen did not have extravagant hopes for the things in the depths. He planned to carefully study the formation pattern here. If he could comprehend it, it would naturally be of great benefit. Dang! However, just as Zi-Chen calmed down and prepared to feel it, the bell suddenly rang. This time, it did not come from afar, but from the sea of consciousness. The bell rang far away, but it carried an unshakable will. Zi Chen's mind, which had sunk into the formation pattern, was forcefully shaken out. This caused Zi Chen's expression to change. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. His soul power was violently shaken. The bell was actually stopping him. Zi Chen tried again, but it was still the same. Furthermore, the power of the shock was getting stronger. However, Zi Chen discovered a part of the secret of the formation pattern from the bell. If he continued to investigate, he would definitely discover something. Dang! The bell rang, stirring up powerful ripples in the surroundings. The bell that originally rang in the soul had now filled the room. The room was shaking. More and more blood flowed from the corner of Zi Chen's mouth. His entire soul was shaking violently, and it would collapse at any time. If he wanted to completely comprehend it, it would take a very long time. Zi Chen was destined to return empty-handed. Just as his consciousness was about to withdraw, there was a sudden sound in the room. A black stone appeared out of thin air and floated above Zi Chen's head, stirring up ripples in the space. Chapter 4892. The vibrations in the room returned to normal, and the ripples also disappeared. A piece of black stone floated above Zi Chen's head, suppressing all abnormalities. Zi Chen, who was about to withdraw his consciousness, suddenly became clear. The ringing of the bell disappeared. He saw what was happening outside, and he was both surprised and delighted. He didn't expect that piece of black stone to reveal such an extraordinary sight at this time. His mind was clear, and without the disturbance of the bell, Zi Chen's consciousness gradually sank into the runes. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that these runes were divine runes. The runes were very complex and mysterious, and Zi Chen was immersed in them. The ring that enveloped the room emitted light, and the attacks of the skeletons became even more intense. Facing the constant attacks, the light of the ring dimmed, and the skeletons seemed to be able to rush in at any time. The black stone that was suppressing the ringing of the bell suddenly trembled again. With a boom, ripples spread out in all directions. Wherever the ripples passed, the skeletons would fall apart and scatter to the ground. They didn't reassemble, and it was as if they were dead. The surroundings became incomparably quiet. The battles in other places couldn't affect this place, and the ringing of the bell would automatically disappear after reaching here. Zi Chen's mind was clear, and it was as if he had entered the long river of history, and he was closely watching the birth of divine runes. One rune after another enlarged in front of his eyes, and all kinds of trajectories appeared. Zi Chen, who had some understanding of divine runes, slowly understood from his confusion to enlightenment after an unknown period of time. Zi Chen heard the sound of a bell from afar. This bell no longer had any intention of disturbing him, and it was instead filled with an ethereal feeling. He opened his eyes, and a divine light flickered in his eyes. He glanced at the divine runes below, and the divine runes exploded, and the fragments were caught by Zi Chen. With a thought, this energy entered Zi Chen's body. It was second only to the void fragments, and it increased Zi Chen's energy. The black stone fell from above, and Zi Chen held it in his hand. He carefully examined it, but he still didn't find anything. Evidently, the black stone still had a huge secret. Zi Chen kept it. If it wasn't for the black stone, Zi Chen wouldn't have been able to obtain the divine imprints. Zi Chen walked out of the room, put away the ring, and saw the bones scattered all over the floor. The previously motionless skeleton was now struggling and wriggling, ready to stand up at any moment. Zi Chen tapped his foot and quickly flew out of this place. At this moment, there was almost no one in the periphery. Everyone had entered the depths of the city. The fluctuations of the battle continued to spread. It should have reached the climax. Zi Chen knew that he was weak and would not be able to get anything even if he went deeper. Therefore, he wandered around the outer rooms, looking for something. His luck was not bad. He found fragments of different sizes. After a thorough search of a large area, he was ready to leave. Scram! An angry, roar suddenly came from the depths, followed by a loud rumble. Two figures of light soared into the sky and fought in midair. Helen, do you think you are qualified to snatch something from me? This was Pieser's voice. He leaped high into the air and kicked Helen's head. Helen was smashed to the ground, and the huge saber flew out of her hand. Zichen saw this scene from afar, and his expression changed. Haha, no one is going to snatch it from me. Pieser stood in midair, laughing proudly. He was holding a golden brilliance in his hand. Mine, this is mine. Pieser swung the golden brilliance. A bell rang, and golden ripples surged out. Those who rushed towards Pieser were sent flying one after another. Pieser got the bell. Zichen looked at the distant sky and couldn't help but be shocked. At this moment, the bell rang again, but it didn't come from Pieser's direction. Instead, it came from another direction. Another person soared into the sky and obtained a golden brilliance. Zichen was stunned. Why were there two golden bells? Soon after, a third and a fourth golden bell appeared in 4 different directions. Zichen discovered that although the bell was loud, it didn't seem to have the same power as before. Clang! An even louder bell rang out, and the entire city suddenly shook. It was as if a strange power had pierced through the city, and a rumbling sound could be heard from the ground. It's underground. Then there were more cries of surprise. Another brilliance leaped up and then quickly descended. For a moment, the brilliance flickered continuously. Everyone flew down. It seemed that there was another huge space underground. During this time, the battle was still going on, accompanied by a huge commotion. Zichen hesitated whether or not to go over. After all, his cultivation level was low, and he was completely the weakest existence here. Helen, you're courting death, so don't blame me for it. In the sky, Pieser suddenly unleashed a powerful attack. Zichen heard the others' cries of surprise. He, who had been hesitating, flew straight into the depths. Helen might be in danger. When he used the lightning escape to rush forward, he took out the black stone. Perhaps it could save her life at a critical moment. Pieser, you are too much. This was the bearded man's voice. Light circulated above his head, blocking the descending attack. But it only blocked for a few breaths of time. The light dissipated, and the bearded man fell to the ground. Humph! Pieser looked at them, his eyes flashing coldly. If I see you again, don't blame me for not giving you a way out. As soon as he finished speaking, Pieser entered the ground. At this moment, most of the others had left. When Zichen arrived, only Helen's team was left. Helen was injured, the bearded man was wounded, and the others were not in good condition. Zichen, why are you here? After seeing Zichen, everyone's expression changed, because the guy who only had a soul left had run out. At that time, everyone was very surprised. How is the boss? Zichen walked up. It's nothing serious, just some injuries. Helen shook her head, but in the next moment, she coughed up blood again. Zichen hurriedly took out a few fragments and handed them to Helen. Helen shook her head again and said, You stay here and don't go down. The golden bell ran down. It will be more dangerous down there. Helen was injured. Once she went down to fight, she would not be able to take care of Zichen. But in your situation, Zichen looked at Helen. She was already injured, so it might be more dangerous if she went down. We will act according to the circumstances. Helen ate a fragment that was in better condition. Obviously, she had also gained something on the way. Zichen nodded his head and watched as the group entered the underground. During this time, Alva waved at him, telling him to leave quickly. Zichen took a few steps forward and saw a huge deep pit. The pit was pitch black and could not be explored by soul power. Zichen did not intend to go in. There was no more here. There were many houses around, so he could look for fragments. Just as he was about to leave, The black stone in his hand suddenly vibrated and made a dong sound. A ripple spread out in all directions, and a distorted space appeared right in front of Zichen. Chapter 4893. The black stone only trembled for a moment, but it didn't do anything else. A spatial entrance appeared in front of him. Zichen was surprised. He walked forward and slowly approached. After approaching, he carefully stretched out his hand and probed forward. A suction force appeared and Zichen disappeared from the ripples. Zichen entered an empty place. Green grass grew on the ground, extending as far as his eyes could see. He stepped on the grass and looked around. This space wasn't large, only a few thousand feet wide. There was no obvious danger, but there were also no visible opportunities. Zichen walked forward, his soul force spreading out. Wang. Above his head, a divine rune suddenly appeared. The originally green grass began to change. The surrounding mountains suddenly rose from the ground. Zichen stood on a mountain peak, thunder and lightning flashing above his head. It was as if there were countless thunder dragons hiding in the black clouds, letting out deafening dragon roars. Zichen stood on the mountain peak, looking up at the scene in the sky, his eyes filled with shock. At this moment, he who was only a step away from the smelting trial realm felt the might of the heavens, and a feeling of insignificance welled up within him. This strange phenomenon came from the divine rune in the sky. Zichen was shocked. It was just a divine rune, but it actually possessed such a terrifying power. Just as countless bolts of lightning were about to fall, a scene of world destruction was about to appear. A sharp light suddenly appeared in the sky. It was like an immortal sword descending, cutting through the heavens. The scene in the sky shattered. Zichen saw himself standing in a sea of flames, surrounded by countless flame life forms. They roared at the sky, filled with unwillingness and grief. Beneath the flames was a divine rune formed from countless divine seals, layered upon each other. It was extremely complex. These flame life forms were not real life forms, but the products of the divine rune. Each flame life form was filled with a powerful and terrifying aura. Zichen could only feel fear at close range. However, this scene reversed in the next instant. A giant's foot entered this space and descended from the sky. Everywhere it passed, the flame life forms let out unwilling cries and scattered one by one. The divine runes crumbled, and the scene of flames in front of Zichen disappeared. Then, divine runes spread out in the sky, and countless divine weapons flew out, covering the sky and covering the sun. However, there was a saber that flew up into the sky, destroying the rain of swords and tearing apart the divine runes. The following scenes allowed Zichen to see how powerful the divine imprint was. It could change the heavens and the earth, reverse yin and yang, move mountains, and move seas. However, no matter how powerful the divine imprint was, there would always be an even more powerful attack that would destroy it all. All the divine inscriptions shattered. Zichen was incomparably shocked. Any one of the divine inscriptions here could easily kill him, and those that could break through the attacks of the divine inscriptions were even more terrifying. He didn't know how powerful a Heaven's Choice Realm cultivator was, but he was sure that even a Heaven's Choice Realm cultivator would die in an instant in this divine glyph world. The scenes finally disappeared, and Zichen saw a brand new scene. This was a whole new world. This world was lush, with lush forests and towering ancient trees could be seen everywhere. In this world, there was a huge city, and countless people lived in the city. These people looked at the sky with different emotions on their faces. Some were nervous, some were angry, some were afraid, some were terrified, and some were even in despair. Looks like the Tao of divine imprints can't be defended anymore. A helpless sigh suddenly sounded, sounding very helpless and helpless. Hearing this voice, everyone's emotions changed, and their eyes were filled with hatred. Wang. In the sky, a huge diagram of the divine imprint appeared, covering the entire sky. Dang! A long bell rang, reverberating in this world. Xiao, xiao, xiao! Countless attacks suddenly flew in from the sky, colliding with the divine imprint, and a terrifying shockwave erupted. There was an invasion. The people in the city started to form seals, and one by one, extraordinary divine imprints appeared in their hands. The divine imprints flew into the sky and entered the divine imprint. Dang! 5 golden bells, 1 big and 4 small, suddenly flew into the sky from the city, and the melodious sound of the bells reverberated, flying into the sky. This battle lasted for a long time, and the people in the city tried their best to support the divine imprint, but in the end they couldn't. The 5 golden bells flew back from the sky, and the divine imprint exploded. A destructive energy fell from the sky into this world and engulfed the city. In an instant, all life fell, and the city that was originally full of vitality became a city of death. At this moment, a spiritual light flew out, piercing through the sky like a sharp sword. Zi Qin heard an angry roar from the sky, and then the dim light flew back and disappeared into the city. The scene disappeared, and Zi Chen found himself standing in a space. In this space, there were countless divine imprints. What he saw before was like an illusion. However, Zi Chen knew that it wasn't an illusion, but something that happened in this world many years ago. The auras in that space were all stronger than his perception, but they didn't even see what the enemy was like, and they died in an instant. There were so many experts. Was this world the immortal spell world? Zi Chen was shocked. Looking around, these divine imprints were all very powerful, and they emitted terrifying fluctuations. They were currently in a sealed state and hadn't been opened. There's nothing left except for these divine imprints. Since you're here, it means that you're fated with my clan. Take one of these divine imprints and leave. This was the voice of an old man, and it came from the same person who sighed many years ago. Zi Chen looked around, but he didn't find anyone. This voice should have been left behind many years ago. There were many divine imprints here, but the other party said that he could only take one. Which one should he take? He released his soul power. These divine imprints were all extraordinary, and taking any one of them would be a great disrespect to the other divine imprints. It would be great if he could take all of them, but it was impossible. Zi Chen didn't think of trying to take all of them, because this was a one-time opportunity, and he might lose his life if he didn't do it well. As for whether it was possible that the other party was testing his courage, and that they might succeed if he took all of them, it wasn't impossible, but it was too small. Zi Chen didn't have the confidence to take the risk, so he could only choose one of them. Using his soul power, Zi Chen found a relatively weak, divine imprint among the terrifying auras. The reason why he paid attention to this divine imprint was that it was familiar to him. It was very similar to the one he had sensed before, but there were some differences. Zi Chen walked past the terrifying divine imprints and came to the side of this inconspicuous divine imprint. He couldn't tell the difference between the two, but he felt that something was wrong. Compared to the other divine imprints that he wasn't familiar with, Zi Chen felt that this divine imprint might be more useful. This was because he might not be able to understand the other divine imprints. But this was different. He had already come into contact with it, and it was a fragment that could help him break through. After hesitating for a while, Zi Chen decided to choose this divine imprint. Zi Chen's hand reached out to grab the divine imprint, but at this moment, the divine imprint in front of Zi Chen suddenly disappeared. Chapter 4894. All the divine patterns disappeared, leaving only a ray of light in front of Zi Chen. Zi Chen looked at the light in front of him with a strange expression. This spiritual light was round and looked like a ripe fruit, floating quietly in front of him. No matter how he looked at it, it had nothing to do with divine patterns. Whoosh! A ray of light suddenly flew out of the spiritual light and turned into an old man. He looked at Zi Chen. Zi Chen had already retreated 30 feet away, his face full of vigilance. Sigh! The old man sighed. Zi Qin had heard this voice before, and his expression changed again. You should have seen everything since you were able to reach here. The old man said expressionlessly, That's right. I am a remnant spirit left behind. I thought I would never appear again. The old man spoke weakly, clearly lacking in spirit. Zi Chen stood in place, a little confused. The old man continued, Being able to reach here means that you are fated with the divine patterns, and suddenly a strange light flashed in the old man's eyes, and his expression changed. Is it that bad? Are all of you at the same level as the divine patterns? He sighed and continued, Looks like you have never given up. Zi Chen didn't know if it was an illusion, but he felt that the old man's spirit was quickly recovering, as if vitality was being injected into him again. He seemed to be in high spirits. You found the fruit of Tao, which means that our race shouldn't die out. Young man, what is your name? Zi Chen. Zi Chen quickly cupped his fists. Good. Very good. The old man nodded again, and then he reached out with his hand. The only spiritual light here flew toward Zi Chen's forehead and entered his mind. The fruit of Tao is the foundation of the divine patterns. It can greatly improve your understanding and make you naturally close to divine patterns. Back then, only those with natural spell soul were qualified to have it. It is like a seed that is planted in the heart, waiting to grow into a towering tree in the future. Countless divine pattern knowledge flowed into Zi Chen's mind, and among them was the divine pattern that could condense fragments that Zi Chen was familiar with. The name of the divine sigil was First Explanation of the Law of the Tao. While Zi Chen was absorbing the knowledge of the Tao fruit, the old man was staring at the black stone. He seemed to be reminiscing about the past, lost in thought. After discovering that the black stone was extraordinary, Zi Chen had been carrying the black stone all the way, just in case. You've absorbed quite well. You don't seem to be any weaker than the law, soul Tao body. Is this the choice of your race? Perhaps this really is an opportunity. The old man nodded. He was quite satisfied with Zi Chen's performance. The only thing he was dissatisfied with was that his cultivation level was too low. However, Zi Chen had already obtained the Tao fruit. His cultivation would definitely speed up. In fact, it would be difficult for him to slow down. What he had to do from now on was to live. As he absorbed the Tao fruit, Zi Chen's soul force also underwent an obvious change. His soul became more condensed, and its quality improved. Even the nature of his soul has changed. Could he be a Dharma soul Tao body left behind by our race? The old man's eyes widened in disbelief. Zi Chen had actually perfectly absorbed the Tao fruit. In the history of the Tao of divine patterns, only the law, soul Tao body could do so. After a while, Zi Chen, who had completely refined the Tao fruit, opened his eyes. Countless divine seals flashed across his eyes, and his gaze became extremely sharp. Since you've refined the Tao fruit, it's equivalent to receiving the inheritance of our race. If possible in the future, remember to help our race develop. The old man's expression returned to normal. A glowing divine seal appeared in his hand. This seal is the initial seal of the Tao of divine patterns. Keep it by your side. It will be of great help to your Tao of divine patterns. Zi Chen received it with both hands as a sign of respect. Other than the Tao fruit, our race also has two supreme treasures. One is the divine pattern sky bell. It has one main and four side bells. The other is the sword of Tao, which is condensed from countless divine patterns. They can greatly increase the combat power of the divine pattern race. Zi Chen thought of the divine pattern sky bell and the spiritual light that flew out after the destruction of the world. The old man opened his eyes and looked around. His gaze seemed to pierce through space and see what was happening in the outside world. Some ripples appeared in his emotions. His eyes were filled with sadness again, and there was even a hint of sadness. Zi Chen suddenly thought of something. His expression changed. This place might disappear. He used the word disappear, but he did not say destroy. However, the meaning was similar. The old man seemed to be able to sense it. He nodded. This world is already broken and incomplete. It's only a matter of time before it disappears. While lamenting, he also felt somewhat fortunate. Fortunately, Zi-chan had arrived and allowed the Tao of Divine Patterns to have an inheritor. Otherwise, the Tao of Divine Patterns would really disappear in the long river of history. Why have you been holding on to it? The old man looked at the black stone in Zi-chen's hand. I picked it up. I don't know what it's for. Just in case. Zi-chen smiled awkwardly and hurriedly put it away. The old man was slightly stunned. Then he nodded and did not say anything else. The old man waved his hand, and a door of light appeared beside him. Zi-chen was somewhat puzzled. The old man explained, "This is the underground world, created by the Tao of Divine Patterns. There should be some things left behind. Go and see what you can take away." Zi-chan noticed that the old man's body was starting to turn illusory, and the space around him was no longer stable. For a moment, he also became sad. Originally, I was just a remnant soul. There was nothing to pity. However, after seeing you, I once again have hope. Back then, I left behind these things in despair. Today, it seems that I was right. The old man waved his hand. Remember, live on. Don't let the Tao of Divine Patterns disappear. A surge of energy landed on Zi-chen, pushing him into the door of light. The old man and the space around him disappeared. The old man did not tell Zi-chen why this world had become like this. He did not tell him who his terrifying enemy was. He did not ask him to take on the Tao of Divine Patterns to seek revenge, nor did he give him any pressure. Instead, he allowed him to live on. Even though Zi-chen had seen countless parting of life and death, he still felt sad. He did not know where that space was, so he could only turn around and bow respectfully. The sound of a bell suddenly rang out, causing ripples. It went in, it went in. Quick, stop it. Get lost, it's mine. Someone was shouting loudly. Apparently, they were fighting for something. The powerful aura gave Zi-chen quite a bit of pressure. Then he realized that he had come to the underground. This was the place where Helen had advised him not to enter. "Kid, it's really fate to meet you here." A laugh came from the side. "Great fate." Zi-chen turned his head and saw Lux not far away. Lux's eyes were filled with obvious killing intent. Shwa. Zi-chen did not waste time with Lux. He directly flew into the distance because he saw Helen and the others. They were not in good condition. "Still want to run? Do you think you can escape?" Lux laughed mockingly. He followed behind. His cultivation level was far higher than Zi-chen's, but he was not in a hurry to kill. He knew where Zi-chen was going. "I already said that if I see you again, I won't be polite anymore. Why don't you believe me?" Pieser looked at Helen, who was lying on the ground. A cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "You don't believe me? Or you think I can't do it?" Behind Pieser stood 3 people with cold expressions. Everyone in Helen's team was injured. "Pieser, have you forgotten what happened back then?" Alva glared at him. "What happened back then?" Pieser laughed. "You were weak back then, and you are still weak now. Speaking of which, Alva, I can't even be bothered to recruit someone like you. Big Beard and Luo Xiao, you too can consider joining my team. You won't have to die today." "In your dreams," the injured Big Beard replied coldly. "Don't even think about it." This was Luo Xiao's attitude. Pieser smiled faintly. "Not bad, you're courageous. But soon, another courageous one will be buried with you." He turned his head and looked into the distance. Zi-chen had turned into a ray of light and was approaching. "Zi-chen, why are you here again?" Seeing Zi-chen, Alva grew anxious. Zi-chen smiled helplessly. "I accidentally came in." He walked towards Helen. A cold light flashed through Pieser's eyes. Zi-chen walked past Callio. Callio suddenly took out a short sword and stabbed towards Zichen's back. Chapter 4895. Callio had suddenly launched a sneak attack on Zichen, and it was a fatal one at that. Such a scene was simply too sudden. While everyone was still in a daze, Zichen seemed to have sensed it and easily dodged it with a sidestep. Under such an unexpected situation, no one would be able to react in time unless they had anticipated it. Rax, who was slowly catching up from behind, had a look of astonishment in his eyes when he saw this scene. Piesar was also surprised. "What's going on?" "Callio, what are you doing?" Big Beard's face was full of anger. He quickly pulled Zichen behind him and pushed Callio. Callio's body slid back until he was 30 meters away. "Callio, what are you doing?" Helen stood up as well. "Injured." She glared at Callio in disbelief. The others in the team also looked at Callio in confusion. They were all in the same team and shouldn't have any conflicts with Zichen. Why would he attack Zichen? What made them even more confused was that Zichen seemed to have anticipated this and dodged in advance, causing Callio's sneak attack to miss. Callio ignored the others and stared at Zichen. "Why? Why are you on guard against me?" The others were also confused and wanted to know what Zichen was thinking. Zichen looked at Callio. "The shard is very precious. No matter how unambitious you are, you wouldn't just leave it in your room. You suspect me because of this? I did go to get the shard." Callio felt a bit wronged. After they left, Alva had asked him what he had done when he returned. "I believe that, but the shard you took was definitely not the one we got before. It must have been given to you by Rax, right? You didn't go back to get the shard, but to listen to Rax's persuasion on how to kill me." Zichen smiled coldly and said, "When you came back with the fragment, you glanced at me, and the look in your eyes was clearly different from before. During the rest of the journey, you paid attention to me a few times, and the look in your eyes was also somewhat strange." When we reached the outskirts of the city, many people had already arrived. Rax's team had also arrived, but he was the only one who hadn't. He came late, and when he saw me in the crowd, he showed a proud expression. No one had expected that Zichen would discover so many details. They were all stunned for a moment. Callio said unwillingly, "You're suspecting me because of this?" "I'm used to being cautious, so when I sensed that something was wrong, I became more careful and deliberately guarded against you. Just now, it was just a small test. I didn't expect you to be so impatient and attack me." Earlier, Zichen had purposely walked towards Callio's side to lure him in and verify his own suspicions. Of course, Zichen hoped that he was wrong, but unfortunately he was right. If you had calmed down and waited a little longer, perhaps my doubts would have been dispelled. "Kid, I've underestimated you." When Rax heard this from behind, he was also shocked. "You're so meticulous. It would be a pity to kill you. I'll give you one more chance. Cooperate with us and work for us, and I'll spare your life." Beside him, Piesar also nodded and said, "I agree with his words. Rather than die here for nothing, why don't you follow us and create a glorious future that no one has ever seen before? When that time comes, you'll be a pioneer. How glorious will that be?" A glowing jade plate appeared in his hand. You should be familiar with this, right? It's specifically used to target the soul. It can be used to refine the soul multiple times. When the time comes, it'll be like reading memories. We'll know what we want to know. That's why my patience is limited. If you don't want your soul to be controlled by us, make your decision quickly. Piesar raised the jade plate in his hand. From now on, it's up to you to live like a human or neither. The others looked at Zichen nervously. "You," Zichen coldly smiled. However, before he could finish his sentence, a long blade appeared behind him and pierced into his chest with a puff sound. Then, a destructive aura rushed into Zichen's consciousness, forcefully destroying Zichen's soul. Such a scene stunned everyone. They were all waiting for Zi Chen's reply. Who would have thought that it would turn out like this? Piessa laughed. You want to live like a human, but I won't give you that chance. Compared to you, it's easier for me to use you as a human. Helen, look at your team. What kind of people did you recruit? I managed to turn 2 of them over so easily. Standing behind Zi-Chin was Kem. He suddenly launched a destructive attack on Zi-Chin. There was no call for help. Everyone was dumbfounded. Zi-Chin! Alva yelled. Boom! Zi-Chin stomped his feet. Suddenly, a large flame appeared under his feet. It was like lava gushing out. A terrifying aura engulfed the surroundings. Kem was shocked and immediately retreated. He pulled his long knife out of Zi-Chen's chest. Zi-Chin fell into the flames. His body was engulfed in flames. Why are you running? Don't let him die. I have use for his soul. Piessa shouted, glaring at Kem, who was retreating. The sudden appearance of the flames was too terrifying. Kem could not say anything. Facing Piessa's questioning, he could only brace himself and move forward. At this moment, a fire beast suddenly pounced at him. Kem swung his knife, and the fire beast was split into 2. However, after this fire beast dispersed, several more fire beasts appeared in their field of vision. There were even more fire beasts in front of him. He could not see Zi-Chin at all. No matter how unwilling Kem was, he had no choice but to back off. This was because Luo Xiao was charging at him. He flashed a few times and arrived in front of Piessa. Kaleo was already there. Helen, Luo Xiao, Big Beard, the Qian brothers, and Alva stood together. Between the 2 sides, there was a terrifying flame burning fiercely. No one knew how these flames appeared, and why they appeared so cleverly. Piessa's expression was terrible. The flame had ruined his plan. That guy is definitely dead. His soul is useless. Kill the others, and let's go. Piessa was furious. He was in a bad mood. At this moment, the flame in front of him suddenly shook. Zi-Chin, who should have died in the flame, suddenly appeared. Those terrifying flames actually circled around him after he appeared, unable to harm him in the slightest. Today, none of you will leave. Zi-Chin, who was standing in the middle of the flames, looked like a demon. Boom! Chapter 4896. The flames spread quickly, forcing Alva and the others to retreat. They looked at Zi-Chen's back in the flames, feeling like he was a stranger. There was even a trace of worry in their eyes. Zi-Chen, who should have been dead, was suddenly controlling the flames. This made them wonder if Zi-Chen's body had been forcibly taken over by some other existence. Perhaps the real Zi-Chen was already dead. Right at this moment, a powerful force suddenly appeared, sweeping up their bodies and flying them out of the sea of flames. They landed steadily on the ground, unharmed. Looking ahead, Piessa's group was already enveloped in flames. His body hasn't been taken over. He's still Zi-Chin, still the same old Zi-Chin. Alva shouted excitedly. If he'd been possessed by a flaming demon, there was no way he could have saved them. The others were also excited, but soon a puzzled thought emerged. Why could Zi-Chin control the flames here? After all, his cultivation level was low. He hadn't even reached the trial realm yet. Unfortunately, Zi-Chan was standing in the center of the flames and couldn't answer their questions. This is the time Zi-Chin bought for us. Everyone, heal first, said Helen. Heal first. Only then did everyone realize that they could take advantage of this rare opportunity to heal their injuries. Earlier, they'd all been injured. If Zi-Chin hadn't appeared, they would have been killed by Piessa. At this moment, Zi-Chin was also healing his wounds within the flames, refining piece after piece of shrapnel. The reason he dared to come and test Kaleo when he'd seen Helen and the others in danger was because he had absolute confidence in controlling the divine glyphs here. But even Kem had betrayed him. This was beyond his expectations. After refining the fruit of Tao, Zi-Chin looked around. This place had long since become different. To others, the ground was flat, but to him, it was filled with runes. As far as the eye could see, there were formation patterns everywhere. The earth, the sky, the mountains, they were all formed by runes. As the inheritor of the fruit of Tao, Zichen could only be considered a beginner. It was impossible for him to form so many runes, but this didn't stop him from activating them. Boom! The flames were raging, and the earth was collapsing. This place had become a place of raging flames. Countless fire beasts emerged from the ground and pounced on the life forms they sensed. Everyone was trying their best to defend against the beasts. However, there were too many of them, and they were too strong. For a moment, everyone was trapped. Damn it, how did this happen? Not only were the others in trouble, even Piesser was in trouble. He attacked one after another, killing the nearby fire beasts. But soon, more fire beasts appeared. Wherever there was fire, the fire beasts would never be extinguished. Seeing that the number of fire beasts was increasing, Piesser had no choice but to take out the golden bell from before. He didn't know if it would be of any use, so he started shaking it. Clang! As the bell rang, layers of runes spread out like rain. Wherever the runes passed, the flames disappeared. The fire beasts in the flames also disappeared. A spacious area appeared, and Zichen's expression couldn't help but change. This golden bell was indeed a supreme treasure of the Tao of divine patterns. Naturally, it released countless ripples of runes to break the formation. As a result, it was much more difficult to defeat everyone in one go. Piesser was stunned at first. He didn't expect the golden bell to be so powerful, but then a smile appeared on his face. He looked into the depths of the flames, his eyes full of killing intent. Yes, he's coming this way. Zichen sensed Piesser's approach and immediately retreated. During this time, more fire beasts ran in this direction. As the bell rang, layers of runes to break the formation surged, opening a path for Piesser. Piesser moved forward. He wanted to find Zichen. At this moment, a scream sounded. It was from the people he had brought with him. Then, cries of alarm sounded from both sides. This made Piesser hesitate. Seeing that more and more fire beasts were gathering, he could only give up on looking for Zichen. Then he followed the sound and went to rescue his companions under the guidance of the golden bell. One by one, his companions were rescued by him. Even Kaleo and Kem were brought out by him. When they came out, besides Piesser, the others looked very pale. Their auras were weak. If Piesser hadn't saved them in time, they might have died in there. For a moment, everyone's face was filled with fear. Zichen stood in the flames and looked at the people outside indifferently. He didn't want to let anyone go, but he didn't expect that he wouldn't be able to kill anyone. The golden bell in Piesser's hand was a supreme treasure of the Tao of divine patterns. It could naturally suppress divine patterns. He had to get it. Now, it was up to whether Piesser would come in again. Piesser stood outside the flames, his expression changing. He seemed to be conflicted. At this moment, the bell rang again. Piesser's expression changed. He said, "Let's go," and left with his people. Helen and the others saw Piesser and the others leave from the other side of the flames. "I wonder how Zichen is doing," Alva muttered. The flames in front of them still hadn't disappeared. Zichen sat cross-legged in the flames. There was probably no other place safer than here. He needed to recover from his injuries first. It was depressing. He hadn't been here for long, but he had already been seriously injured twice. Fortunately, there were fragments here to help him recover. Otherwise, it would be troublesome. Under the effects of the fragments, Zichen's injuries were quickly recovering. The divine pattern from before was slowly exhausting its power. The flames disappeared, and Zichen's figure appeared. Helen and the others didn't leave. They were still waiting here. Because they had gone in earlier, they had obtained fragments of higher quality than Zichen's. Therefore, their injuries recovered faster. However, everyone's expressions weren't very good. The original team of 9 was now down to 7. The betrayal of the two had made everyone feel very uncomfortable. Looking at Zichen, they didn't know what to say. Even some of them had started to harbor ill feelings towards each other. If things went wrong, there might be a third betrayer. There should be many good things here. We can continue forward. Zichen walked closer and spoke first to ease everyone's awkwardness. Everyone looked at Helen. Helen looked at Zichen and asked, "How can you control the flames here?" "These flames are divine patterns. I just happened to comprehend some of them," Zichen explained simply. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he didn't tell the complete truth. Helen nodded and said, "You can only control this one." "I can control some." He guessed why Helen asked this question. Chapter 4897. Helen's words implied that she was suspicious of everyone else in the team. Everyone was depressed, but they couldn't say anything. After all, there were already 2 traitors in their team of 9. What if they appeared again? Although this wasn't a permanent solution, neither Helen nor Zichen had any other ideas. Moreover, they knew that Zichen was being careful. He definitely wouldn't reveal any flaws, so it was better for him not to return for the time being. Moreover, it was indeed more convenient for Zichen to go alone. After telling them to be careful, Zichen flew into the depths of the forest. He could clearly see all the divine inscriptions along the way. Bells rang in the depths of the forest. Someone must have discovered something. By the time Zichen reached the depths of the forest, the battle had already erupted. Many divine inscriptions had been activated, and the battle was extremely intense. Among them, the 4 golden bells were particularly eye-catching because they had an absolute suppressive effect on divine inscriptions. Zichen didn't participate. Instead, he circled around the battlefield and flew deeper into the forest. "Look, Zichen!" Kaleo saw Zichen in the distance and gave everyone a warning. "Rax, take the others and follow him. I'll be right there." Pieser, who was holding a golden bell and deciphering divine inscriptions, glanced in the direction Zichen had left. Rax nodded and beckoned the team forward. There were more than 10 people in his team, and they were all experts. Zichen, who had entered the depths of the forest, sensed Rax and the others tailing him. He didn't pay them any mind and arrived at a flat area. He lightly stomped his foot, and the space in front of him rippled. A door of light appeared, and Zichen walked in. The others who followed closely behind him were all amazed. They imitated Zichen's stomp. Boom! The earth trembled, and a divine inscription was activated. Spikes grew out of the ground like swords. Everyone was shocked, and they immediately soared into the sky. Whoosh! 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 The sound of something breaking through the air rang out, and those earth spikes followed closely behind. In that space, Zichen saw a shining fragment. Compared to the ones he had obtained before, this fragment was complete. From afar, it looked like a real Xingqian. If the fragments from before were to be compared to medicinal pills, then this one could be said to be a higher grade medicinal pill. It could bring life and death back to life. Even Zichen, who possessed a Dao fruit, felt a sense of danger as he was surrounded by divine runes. He took out the divine seal that the old man had given him and activated it. Like a seal, the divine seal temporarily stopped working. Zichen's figure flickered as he quickly approached and took away the complete fragment. When he returned to his original position, the luster of the divine seal had dimmed. Zichen put away the divine seal and headed in the next direction. It was difficult for others to see the divine seal, but Zichen seemed to have a pair of see-through eyes. Not only could he see the divine seal, but he also knew what kind of divine seal it was. In this place, it was as if he was walking in his own backyard. After walking out of 3 divine seals, Lux and the others had already disappeared. Dong! 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 Bells rang out continuously, and layers of ripples surged out. The divine seals behind Zichen appeared one by one, and then quickly disappeared. It was not Pieser who had arrived, but a middle-aged man. He did not discover anything else from the divine seal, as if someone had beaten him to it. He looked at Zichen, who was in front of him. Zichen looked at him warily. "It's you," the middle-aged man said, his eyes flashing coldly. "What?" Zichen was puzzled. "You were the one who took the things inside." The middle-aged man asked again, but there was a hint of killing intent in his eyes. Zichen retreated and entered a ripple. The middle-aged man's expression changed. "Solomon, this guy is strange. He seems to be able to ignore the seals and even control them." Just then a voice came from behind. Pieser had arrived, holding the golden bell. Unfortunately, he was too late. Zichen had already disappeared. Oh, could it be that he has some kind of secret treasure? Solomon's eyes lit up. He glanced at Pieser, then charged forward. As he neared the place where Zichen had disappeared, he activated the golden bell. Ripples of seal breaking surged out, and a divine seal appeared on the ground. Solomon laughed disdainfully, and the golden bell in his hand vibrated again. Just then, the ground began to shake, and the flat ground became a mountain range. He was in the middle of the mountain range, as if he had lost the ability to fly. Humph! He snorted coldly, and the golden bell stirred up ripples. Wherever the ripples passed, the mountains disappeared one by one. He forcibly opened a path forward. Dong! 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 The bell behind Zichen continued to ring. The four people were rapidly approaching. After all, they could ignore all the divine seals and walk at the front. Wong! In the air above Pieser's head, an enormous divine seal formation appeared. Countless rays of sword light descended from the sky, shooting towards him. There was a sharp whistle in the air, and the entire space seemed to be torn apart by the sword light. This attack seemed powerful, but in front of Pieser it was nothing. The golden bell shook, and all the sword light disappeared. "Kid, just wait for your death." Pieser glanced into the depths, a cold killing intent flashing in his eyes. Zichen walked past one restriction after another, obtaining many complete energy fragments. As long as there was a divine imprint that was still in existence, Zichen would be able to easily obtain it. These things were good, but they were not what Zichen truly wanted. At this moment, he was looking for something called the divine seal fruit. It was somewhat similar to the divine seal Dao fruit, but its grade was much lower. That was what Zichen desperately needed. Finally, after passing through one seal after another, he saw the divine seal fruit. It was like a complete law, quietly floating above the runes. As the runes revolved, the power of law from all directions was attracted to the runes, finally gathering at the center of the fruit. Its function was similar to the divine seal fragments in the outside world, but unlike those fragments, the law inside was complete. Zichen used a strange footwork, dodging danger after danger. He quickly approached and grabbed the fruit. In the next instant, he unhesitatingly swallowed the fruit into his stomach. It was like a complete law was evolving in his body. Zichen saw the process of the great Tao extending. In an instant, he entered a meditative state. Countless laws flashed before his eyes. This was the evolution of the great Tao. When the last law disappeared, Zichen's consciousness returned. At this moment, he felt the changes in his body. He had advanced. He had truly reached the divine seal realm. Although this was only a transitional realm, Zichen could clearly feel his own strength. Chapter 4898. As soon as he appeared, Pieser sensed the change in Zichen's cultivation level. His expression changed. "You actually broke through." Zichen smiled faintly. He took a step back and disappeared. "Where do you think you're going?" Pieser chased after him with the golden bell. After breaking through the runes, he didn't discover Zichen. At this moment, Zichen had already stepped into another rune. Rays of light flowed under his feet like a teleportation array. Zi-Chin disappeared. When he reappeared, he was in the central region from the deepest region. Pieser didn't understand runes. Even with the golden bell, he could only destroy them. Zi-Chen was different. He could use the rune array here. There were still some runes here that hadn't been discovered. After all, Zi-Chen could only choose one path. But in this huge space, runes were everywhere. Zi-Chen moved through the runes. He was looking for someone. Not long after, Zi-Chen found Helen's group as well as Raxa's group. His team had already merged with Pieser's. Only Pieser had gone into the depths. The others were here to find opportunities. At the same time, they were also tasked with killing Helen's team. In this team, there were 2 high realm cultivators who were teaming up to fight Helen. With the advantage in numbers, the situation was very unfavorable for Helen's team. Zi-Chin directly activated a rune. The 2 sides were instantly enveloped in a hurricane. Within the hurricane, black air currents raged, carrying a destructive aura. This scene caused everyone's expression to change. They all retreated. Just then, several rays of light suddenly flew out of the black air currents. They landed on Alva and the others, forcibly bringing them out. Alva and the others didn't have the ability to resist the runes. Helen changed her position several times, obliterating the rays of light. "Boss, it's me. You guys retreat first." Zi-Chin had to transmit his voice again. Only then did he bring Helen out. As for the others, including Kaleo and Kem, they were still in the hurricane. Helen and the others gathered together. Zi-Chen walked out of the darkness and pointed in a certain direction. "If we go this way, we'll find something." Helen nodded, while Alva and the others expressed their gratitude. Speaking of which, Zi-Chen had saved them once again. "Let's go." Helen was very decisive. She had guessed what Zi-Chen was going to do, so she signaled everyone to leave quickly. The others also guessed Zi-Chen's plan and looked at the storm, where Kenbi and Kaleo were doing their best to resist. In the end, everyone shook their heads and didn't say anything. Everyone had to pay the price for their mistakes. In a place like this, the price of a mistake could be death. After flying for more than 10 miles, they heard an even louder commotion coming from behind them. When he turned around, he saw that the stormy land was completely enveloped by divine inscriptions. There were divine inscriptions on the ground and in the sky. A terrifying aura gushed out as the 2 divine inscriptions merged together, transforming into a gigantic millstone. Everyone within the formation was trapped within the millstone. In the next moment, the millstone began to rotate. Every time it rotated, a terrifying aura would spread. Mournful screams sounded. Wherever the formation passed, one trial realm cultivator after another had their bodies destroyed, followed by their souls. Kenbi held a defensive item in his hand. At this moment, his eyes were filled with terror. It was as if he had been sealed in a space and could only passively accept the arrangement of fate. As the powerful aura approached, his defense was instantly destroyed. Then his body was crushed by the terrifying energy and instantly turned into dust. The soul that had just escaped dissipated as the millstone rotated again. Next was Kaleo. He only lasted a few breaths longer than Kenbi before he died within the formation. With such a huge commotion, many people who were searching for treasures nearby heard it. When they turned around, everyone's face was filled with fear. Was this still the little guy who had been wandering outside the city for a long time and didn't dare to come in? No one came to stop them. In this place, life and death were up to fate. "Let's go. Don't look anymore." Helen retracted her gaze and flew into the distance. Luo Xiao and the others also followed. Alva sighed. Why did they have to do this? Soon, the screams behind them could no longer be heard. It wasn't because they were far away, but because everyone had died. Even the 2 trial realm cultivators who had teamed up to fight Helen, Lax had also died. The light of the formation disappeared. Zi-Chin stood in place. There was nothing in front of him other than the turbulent energy. The weapons of those people had been completely destroyed by the formation. Nothing was left. This was the terror of the divine inscriptions, the Tao of divine inscriptions. But at this moment, what Ziqin couldn't understand was that even such a powerful divine inscriptionist clan had actually been annihilated. Then how powerful was the enemy? Ziqin, I want you dead. Just as Ziqin was distracted, Pieser ran out from the depths. He felt the aura of his companions disappear one by one. He started to turn back, but he was still a step too late. Ziqin looked at Pieser and gave him the middle finger. In the distance, a sword light as large as a mountain shot into the sky, piercing towards Pieser. This sudden change caused Pieser's expression to change greatly. His body instantly rose into the air, and at the same time he pointed the golden bell in his hand downwards. Dong! Layers of ripples surged, and the mountain that flew out of the ground dissipated. The golden bell was a supreme treasure of the Tao of Runes. It could suppress all runes. If Ziqin had one now, it could greatly increase the power of these runes. But in the hands of the enemy, it could destroy all rune attacks. Swish! 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 Suddenly, Ziqin frowned and looked into the distance. The other 3 people with the golden bells had actually turned back. Solomon, you all saw it. He must have a supreme treasure on him. Let's work together to kill him. Pieser said coldly. The other 3 nodded. They had seen the previous scene with their own eyes. In the outside world, any one of them could easily kill Ziqin. But in the Runelands, Ziqin had the advantage of time and place. He didn't fear the 4 of them. In fact, if they didn't have the golden bell, Ziqin could have killed them in an instant. The 4 of them surrounded Ziqin, and he began to retreat. During this time, one rune after another was activated. Countless runes appeared, releasing a terrifying aura. But with the 4 of them working together, there wasn't a single rune that couldn't be destroyed by the golden bell. Ziqin was forced into a corner and could only retreat continuously. He even had thoughts of leaving this place. At this moment, he summoned another rune. This one came from the sky and looked like a fortress. But as soon as it appeared, it was destroyed by the sound of the bell. Chapter 4899. Ziqin, who had retreated far away, noticed the scene in the sky, and his expression changed. Is this the inextinguishable rune? In the Tao of divine runes, there were many terrifying divine runes. Among them, there was a famous inextinguishable rune. As long as the foundation of the divine rune was not broken, the divine rune itself would not disappear. The golden bell in Pieser's hand rippled, and the divine rune castle was destroyed at a speed visible to the naked eye. But in the next moment, when the inextinguishable rune castle disappeared, it returned to normal. The 4 of them also noticed this, and their faces showed strange expressions. In the distance, Ziqin's expression changed drastically. Apart from being powerful, the inextinguishable rune was also used to store important items. Only by grasping the correct method could one enter it. It was impossible to force one's way unless one had absolute power. Could it be that the golden bell is inside? The golden bell was divided into 1 large and 4 small ones, 1 main and 4 auxiliary ones. The 4 of them had only obtained the auxiliary ones, and the main one had burrowed underground. Could it be that it was hiding here? Ziqin no longer retreated, and instead looked up at the sky. Pieser and the other 3 also stopped attacking him, and stopped around the inextinguishable rune. Kid, what's inside? Pieser glanced at Ziqin and casually asked, not expecting Ziqin to answer. Who knew that at this moment Ziqin would smile and say, "Of course, it's that large golden bell." When the 4 heard this, their eyes lit up. Their small bells were already so powerful in this place. Once they obtained the largest one, wouldn't they be able to turn the world upside down? Pieser glanced at the 3 of them and found that their emotions were fluctuating. Obviously, they all wanted to get something good out of it. Everyone, why don't we work together to get rid of that kid first? Piesser suddenly suggested, but this time not everyone agreed. Two of them looked hesitant. It was not that they did not want to kill Zichen, but that Zichen was very difficult to kill. Chasing after him would only waste everyone's time. Let's open this place first, Solomon said after thinking for a while. Piesser glanced at Zichen. Kid, we're not going to kill you. Why aren't you scramming? Zichen said, don't worry. I also want to see if the golden bell is inside. Besides, each of you already have one. Wouldn't it be great if you gave me one more? Piesser was stunned. This brat was really audacious. He didn't even weigh his own weight. Even if he really gave it to him, would he be able to keep it? Attack! A man in a long robe on the left didn't want to waste any more time. Piesser retracted his gaze. The four of them joined forces, and the sound of the bell rang out, forming a ripple that was even more terrifying than before. Zichen stood in the distance, watching. Although his expression seemed relaxed, he was actually extremely nervous. If the four of them joined forces and broke the inextinguishable divine rune, they would definitely be able to obtain the treasures inside. Right now, he was very sure that the biggest golden bell was inside. However, the four of them were extremely powerful, so he didn't dare to approach them. Sure enough, under the superposition of the four ripples, more than half of the inextinguishable divine rune was destroyed. It looked like it would shatter with another wave. Seeing this scene, Zichen was actually relieved. As long as such an item wasn't destroyed in one go, it would never be opened. Knowing that the four of them couldn't open this place, Zichen was thinking of a way to enter and take the golden bell. However, from the looks of it, it should be impossible. Wherever the ripples passed, the inextinguishable divine rune returned to normal. Piesser's face was cold as he said, "Everyone attack with all your might." Let's try again. The four of them activated the golden bell again. However, no matter how much force they used, there was a limit to the number of ripples on the golden bell. This time they returned without success. Piesser said, "Everyone, cooperate with the golden bell and attack with all your might." Zichen laughed when he heard this. This was going to be interesting. The four of them shook the golden bell in the air. As the ripples appeared, the four of them attacked with all their might. They wanted to break the inextinguishable divine rune in one go. Unexpectedly at this moment, a powerful aura suddenly emerged from the inextinguishable divine rune. This aura instantly fell on the four of them, directly sending them flying. Zichen felt a little regretful. If that attack had been a little stronger, it would have directly annihilated the four of them, and he would have been able to take advantage of it. Moreover, the four of them were too sneaky. As soon as they felt that something was wrong, they immediately took the golden bell away, even at the expense of injuring themselves. How could this be? The four of them had ugly expressions on their faces. Piesser turned to look at Zichen. "Kid, come and try." Zichen shook his head and said, "I can only guide them, but I can't break them." "How would you know if you don't try?" Piesser stared at Zichen. "Don't you want the golden bell?" Zichen said calmly, "Like that attack just now. If it had landed on me, even if it didn't kill me, it would have taken away half of my life. The golden bell is naturally a good thing, but it's my fortune to get it, and it's my fate to lose it." Just as Zichen's voice fell, a loud bell rang out from the depths of the inextinguishable divine rune. "It's the golden bell." Zichen suddenly stared into the distance. He had originally guessed that the golden bell was here, but now it seemed that was not the case. It was still in the depths. Zichen, who had been thinking that it was his fortune to get it, and it was his fate to lose it, was about to rush over at full speed. "Kid, you'd better stay here and guard this place for us." Piesser laughed. The golden bell in his hand vibrated, blocking Zichen's path. At the same time, the other three people continuously attacked. breaking the inextinguishable divine runes around them. This was to prevent Zichen from teleporting. Pieser was the first to fly forward, forming a straight line as he entered the depths of the inextinguishable divine rune. The other three followed, closely behind. In this place, except for the four of them, almost no one else had the strength to fight for the golden bell. Soon, the four of them left, leaving Zichen alone in the inextinguishable divine rune. Zichen, who had been nervously moving forward, suddenly stopped. A smile appeared on his face. There was no harm in guessing wrongly. There must be something important in the inextinguishable divine rune. Otherwise, there would be no need to set it up. The four of them had already left, disappearing without a trace. Zichen took out the divine seal that the old man had given him. Previously, he had already refined the divine seal, which had practically become his natal item. Now, according to the records in the Tao fruit, Zichen had activated the divine seal. The divine seal glowed, completely enveloping his body. Then, Zichen transformed into a stream of light and entered the inextinguishable divine rune in the sky. With the protection of the divine seal, the divine runes would not attack him. Zichen followed the records of the inextinguishable divine rune in his mind and walked in a relatively safe place, going up layer by layer. This place looked like a maze. The runes were intricate and complicated. At a glance, it seemed as if fireworks were lingering in the air. Fortunately, everything was in his memory. He could use his soul remembrance to look at these runes and find the correct method. After going down layer by layer, Zichen finally arrived at the core of the inextinguishable divine rune. There was a small sword floating in the air, the Sword of Tao. Chapter 4900. The divine rune Tao sword floated quietly in front of him. It wasn't a real sword, but something condensed from countless divine seals. It was a supreme treasure of the Tao of divine runes, just like the 5 golden bells. In the scene that Zichen saw, it was the divine rune Tao sword that flew out of the sky and killed the invaders, allowing the world to be preserved. At this moment, Zichen was in the middle of the divine seal. He didn't dare to move forward. Although there seemed to be no danger ahead, there were countless killing moves. Even if the divine seal rushed forward, it would be extremely dangerous. Moreover, Zichen was very clear that the main reason he could reach here was because of the old man's divine seal. The old man's status in this world back then was definitely not low. If it was someone else's divine seal, it might not be so smooth. Zichen sat down cross-legged, his hands beginning to form seals. Rays of light shot out from his fingertips, forming a divine imprint of attraction. This was the simplest divine imprint and didn't require much skill. However, in the Tao of divine imprints back then, it was also the most crucial. Buzz. Being summoned, the Tao sword in front of him started to vibrate, creating ripples. As the ripples spread, the killing array in the surroundings temporarily stopped. In the next moment, the Tao sword disappeared and appeared in front of Zichen. The summoning divine seal disappeared, and the Tao sword was in Zichen's hand. The Tao sword wasn't sharp, but it was terrifying. Only Zichen could see how terrifying it was. When it was broken down, it was countless compressed divine runes. Zichen held the Tao sword in his hand and slashed forward. A ray of sword chi shot out and pierced through the inextinguishable divine rune, leaving a hole. Zichen's figure flashed and flew out of the hole. When he came to the outside world, he raised his head and looked at the inextinguishable divine rune. The hole in the rune didn't heal. Instead, it started to collapse. The inextinguishable divine rune was about to disappear. Zichen's expression changed. If this happened, wouldn't those guys know that he took the item? Just as Zichen was thinking of a way to make up for it, the other divine runes around him started to collapse as well. This world was also starting to collapse. Oh no, this world is going to disappear. Zichen came to his senses. Without thinking about anything else, he shot up into the sky. At this moment, cracks appeared in the sky. Those were the signs of the divine inscriptions collapsing. This space itself was made up of countless divine runes. Just as Zi-Chin soared into the sky, the others followed suit. At this moment, even though some opportunities had appeared on their own, very few people would risk their lives for it. Whoosh! 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 Beams of light shot up into the sky and left the space. Zi-Chin was one of the first few people to return to the upper world. The upper world had already collapsed, but there were some remnants of the upper world floating in the air. This time, the fragments were real void fragments that could increase one's cultivation. With a thought, rays of light flew towards him. Zi-Chin did not stop. He was still flying towards the open sky. Many streams of light were following him. Just as he was about to leave this world, dozens of fragments of different sizes flew towards him and were collected by him. In the next moment, Zi-Chin left the upper world. The others also came out. Some of them came early and obtained benefits like Zi-Chin. Some wanted to take advantage of the lower levels, but most of them stayed in that world forever. Everyone came out one after another. Not long after, Zi-Chin saw Helen and the others. They were all injured, but fortunately their injuries were not serious. Zi-Chin went forward to meet up with them. Next, he waited for the others. Zi-Chin looked at the crowd. He wanted to see who had obtained the last golden bell. He did not have the strength to get it back, so he had to remember their faces. When he was strong enough in the future, he would ask for it. Many people came out, and all of them had smiles on their faces. Obviously, they had gained a lot. Only the 4 of them were missing. Zi-Chin did not believe that they would die in there. With the protection of the golden bell, it would be difficult to die in the upper world. Suddenly, Zi-Chin's expression changed. Those guys did not come. Could it be that they went to the inextinguishable divine runes? However, as soon as this thought appeared, several powerful auras rushed out. It was Pieser and the others. There were a total of 5 of them, each holding a golden bell. However, one of them had a particularly large bell. As soon as he appeared in the void, he laughed heartily. Clearly, he was very satisfied. "Kid, hand over the thing." Zi-Chin deliberately avoided Pieser's gaze, but he did not expect to be seen. With a cold shout, Pieser came in front of Zi-Chin, his eyes cold. "Pieser, what are you doing?" Helen stared at Pieser, and the others were also on guard. "Kid, hand over the thing inside." Pieser said coldly, "What thing?" Zi-Chin asked. "Shwa, shwa, shwa." Another 3 rays of light approached. They were the other 3 holders of the golden bell. The 4 of them surrounded the small team. "Stop playing dumb. Hand over the thing or die." Pieser's eyes were filled with boundless killing intent. "All of you will die." Killing intent came from all directions. The 4 had already locked onto the small team. Boom! Suddenly, there was an explosion in front of them. The world of the Tao of divine inscriptions had shattered. In an instant, countless fragments were left behind, emitting brilliant light. This scene attracted everyone's attention. Usually, when a world shattered, it would be amazing if there were a few fragments left. Sometimes there would not even be a single fragment. But now, the world of the Tao of divine inscriptions had shattered, leaving behind so many fragments. Moreover, many of them were high-grade fragments. Everyone was shocked, but no one went up to fight for it. It had to be said that very few people had such composure. Black Dragon, who had been waiting here, waved his sleeves. A force belonging to the trial realm extended out, enveloping all the scattered fragments. Pieser saw this scene, and there was a slight change in his expression. He had never seen so many fragments in his life. If he used the golden bell to fight for it, it was not impossible. However, after thinking about it, he dismissed the idea. Right now, he had to get the thing. "Kid, do you want to live or die?" He turned around and continued to urge. "I don't know what you're talking about." Of course. Zi-Chin would not admit it. If he did, he might still have a chance to live. If he did, he would die. Now that he thought back to the first person's trap set by the revered king, it was really laughable. This was because ever since Zichen entered the depths, his life had been threatened many times. He could be said to be in a precarious situation. Die. Pieser took out the golden bell, wanting to attack. Since when did the people of the immortal Slaughter City become so arrogant to come to Peace City and behave so atrociously? An indifferent voice sounded. Black Dragon, who was in a good mood after taking the fragment, noticed the commotion. Pieser's expression changed. He did not expect Black Dragon to interfere in this matter. He hurriedly turned around and cupped his fists. Sir, this kid took something of mine when he was inside. I was just about to take it back. Black Dragon's eyes flashed with ridicule. Are you going to rob it? Chapter 4901. The three people who had retreated were all from Peace City. After seeing Lord Black Dragon intervene, they retreated. The person who had obtained the largest golden bell stood in the distance, watching this scene with a smile. I'm taking it back. I'm taking back what belongs to me. Pieser smiled embarrassedly. Black Dragon glanced at him disdainfully, then looked at Zichen. You tell me. I don't know what he's talking about, and I've never taken anything from him. If he thinks that I can move through those divine glyphs at will because I've obtained some supreme treasure and wants to steal it, then he's overthinking it. Many people's expressions changed. When Zichen was in that world, not only could he move about freely, but he could also control those divine glyphs to attack. Everyone thought that he had obtained a supreme treasure. A hint of surprise and curiosity appeared in Black Dragon's eyes. Zichen continued, I didn't obtain any supreme treasure. I just happened to eat a fruit when I was searching for fragments along the way. Thus, I obtained the ability to control those things. Naturally, it was easier for me. You're talking nonsense. What kind of fruit in this world could be so miraculous? Pieser clearly didn't believe him. His expression was very gloomy. He had originally wanted to hide the secret and settle accounts with Zichen later. He hadn't expected this sly guy to reveal it in advance. You're asking me, but who am I supposed to ask? Zichen didn't answer. Instead, he asked a question of his own. Pieser gnashed his teeth. Even if that's the case, then what about the item in the endless divine glyphs? Hand it over. Zichen was amused. The four of you attacked with the golden bells at the same time, but you couldn't break through those divine glyphs. You think I can? If you can control it, then the item inside must have been taken by you, Pieser said coldly. There must be a supreme treasure inside that is even more powerful than the 5 great golden bells. Pieser had nothing left to lose. He was certain that he wouldn't be able to obtain anything from Zichen, so he definitely wouldn't let Zichen off easy. If he pointed out what he had, then there would definitely be others who would cause trouble for him. As expected, after these words were spoken, everyone stared at Zichen, their eyes flashing. That's right. At first, I suspected that the biggest golden bell was inside. Zichen admitted frankly. But when I heard the bell ring, I knew I was wrong. Then the 4 of you left to fight for it, and I left as well. You'll leave. Pieser sneered. Of course I wasn't willing to leave, but I didn't have the strength to break through the seal. So what was the point of staying there? Can't we wait for you to come back? Zichen glanced at Pieser and said, Don't look at me like that. Just one fruit. Even if you can control the formation, there is a limit. If I have the strength to control the formation, I will control the formation to envelop you the moment you get close. Then, I will slowly torture you to death. At that time, what other treasures would I need? The golden bells of the 4 of you are the greatest treasures. I don't believe you. Pieser glared at Zichen. I don't believe a single word you say. Zichen said, What does it have to do with me, whether you believe it or not? I'm not saying it to you. Previously, Black Dragon had asked him to say it, and he had said it. These words were meant for Black Dragon. Black Dragon smiled faintly. He didn't expect such an interesting thing to happen inside. He looked at Zichen and said, "Even if there are no treasures, it seems that you have gained a lot inside. Double the entrance fee." Zichen immediately cupped his fists and took out double the entrance fee on the spot. Black Dragon then looked at Piesar. "You, 10 times the entrance fee, and get lost." Piesar didn't dare to make a fuss in front of a Heaven's Choice realm. Even if he had obtained the Golden Bell treasure, he left immediately after taking out a complete fragment. He didn't even dare to leave behind a harsh word. When they arrived here, Piesar had brought a small team with him. They had even joined forces with Klaas's team. Now, only he and Linduo, who had lost his physical body, were left. After Piesar left, Black Dragon looked at the other 3 people. His eyes became colder. When you enter, everything you obtain is a blessing. If you can't obtain it, it means that you don't have the ability. After coming out, you're even more unreasonable. You're being unreasonable with a guy from the immortal Slaughter City. If this is called being brainless, then the 3 of you are 15 times more brainless. Of course, the 3 of them didn't dare to refute. They quickly took out the fragments. Everyone was surprised. They didn't expect such a result. However, everyone soon understood. The Peace City and the immortal Slaughter City weren't on good terms. These 3 guys had obtained huge benefits, yet they still colluded with the people from the immortal Slaughter City and bullied the people from the Peace City. This was obviously unwise. Black Dragon put away the fragments and looked at the others. Then, everyone began to take out the entrance fee. After collecting the entrance fee, Black Dragon waved his hand and said, "Disperse." Everyone immediately dispersed after bowing to Black Dragon and returned the way they came. Everyone had gained a lot this time, so they naturally wouldn't enter the void again. In the following days, no one would enter the void for a very long time. Black Dragon looked at everyone's departing figures. His gaze lingered on Zichen for a moment. For some time to come, Peace City would not be at peace. On the way back, the atmosphere was very relaxed. Avar smiled and said, "Zichen, I didn't expect you to reach the trial realm so quickly. However, my luck isn't bad either. With this harvest, breaking through to the middle stage of the trial realm is just around the corner. Then congratulations." Zichen smiled and looked at the others. Everyone had a smile on their faces. It probably wouldn't be difficult to break through to the next realm. For the next period of time, everyone will stay in the city and cultivate. I also need to go into seclusion to recuperate. Once my injuries are completely healed, I will attempt to break through to the Heaven's chosen realm. Helen said, This was excellent news for everyone. As long as Helen broke through, Piesar and the others wouldn't dare to come. At that time, their team's ranking in the city would rise again. It might even be possible for them to return to their previous position. After arriving in the city, everyone didn't immediately return. Instead, they went to the tavern from before and drank a cup of wine. When they drank the wine again, it still tasted bad. However, Zichen couldn't take out the wine himself in the tavern, so he drank slowly. After drinking 2 jugs each, everyone bid farewell and returned. Zichen refined the power of laws contained in the wine midway. When he returned to his room, he didn't look at the black stone or the sword of Tao. After such a thing happened, he had to be careful for a while. Zichen began to condense the divine rune. His first divine rune was the initial enlightenment of the law Tao. As long as he completely grasped this divine rune, his future cultivation would definitely be twice the result with half the effort. Using the divine seal as a guide, Zichen outlined a divine rune diagram on the ground. However, before the final divine rune was formed, the divine rune would collapse. This happened several times in a row. In the end, Zichen stopped and calmed his heart. He only tried to recall the scene he saw in the fruit of Tao. Buzz! Chapter 4902. The Elementary Solution. The formation pattern appeared under Zi Chen's feet. Energy from all directions gathered in front of him. A smile appeared on Zi Chen's face. Although he had taken a shortcut with the help of the God Seal, it was quite good. If he really had to study it and condense the God Seal, it would probably take countless years. Zi Chen sat down cross-legged and took out a law fragment. While refining the fragment, the energy from all directions could also help him increase his cultivation. Peace City was particularly lively today. Everyone who returned went to the tavern to celebrate. This was definitely a rare big gain in history. In the room, Zi Chen had already made up his mind not to leave the city before he finished refining the resources. Pieser would definitely not give up. Once he could not find a weakness here, he would probably run to the periphery. Right now, he was not sure if anyone other than him could reach the trial realm that still belonged to them. However, for the time being, Black and White should still be able to control the situation. Therefore, the most important thing for him was to cultivate and grow as soon as possible. Based on the current situation, if he wanted to have power that did not fear anyone, he had to reach the heaven's chosen state as soon as possible. The fragment in Zi Chen's hand was being consumed. The energy from all directions was also being absorbed by the formation. Suddenly, there was an urgent knock on the door. Zi Chen, it was Big Beard's voice. Zi Chen opened his eyes, put away the fragment, and stood up. The God Seal turned into a ray of light and entered Zi Chen's body. The elementary solution then dissipated. "Come in." Big Beard pushed the door open and entered, his eyes filled with anxiety. Zi Chen hurriedly asked what happened. Everyone had just returned and gained a lot. They should be in a good mood, but Big Beard was clearly very anxious. Something happened to Alva. In addition to anxiety, Big Beard's eyes were also filled with rage. "Speak slowly. What happened? Didn't we just disperse not long ago?" Previously, everyone had been drinking. After drinking 2 pots each, they went their separate ways. What could have happened? That idiot Arwa didn't cultivate after he came back. Instead, he felt that he wasn't having enough fun, so he called the Chen brothers out to drink. In the end, he provoked Jeffrey's team. The bearded man said angrily, "Right now, all 3 of them are lying in the ring. Let's go and take a look." Hearing this, Zi Chen walked out of the room, and Big Beardy began to explain what had happened to Zi Chen. Jeffrey's team was very famous in Peace City because Jeffrey himself was a Heaven's Chosen. Back then, before Helen's realm had fallen, the 2 teams had fought against each other. After her realm had fallen, the 2 teams were no longer on the same level. The person Arwa challenged was Jeffrey's younger brother, Jeffrey Ong. They were both at the initial stage of the trial, but Arwa was defeated in less than 10 moves. Big Beard said angrily, "Under normal circumstances, everyone is very careful and almost never provoke those powerful teams. I don't know what's wrong with them today, but they actually dared to provoke Jeffrey's team." Zi Chen understood Arwa's temper. He didn't seem like someone who would take the initiative to cause trouble. There might be other hidden reasons for his sudden challenge. While the 2 were talking, they didn't slow down. Soon, they arrived at the Peace City's ring. Fighting in the ring wasn't rare. Both sides would challenge each other and gamble some resources. There would be no witnesses, and it was more of a formality. However, when Zi Chen arrived, he found that many people had already gathered to watch the show and cheer. Zi Chen's expression changed. He felt that things weren't as simple as they seemed. "Helen, how do you discipline your subordinates? You've fallen for so many years. Can't you let your subordinates behave with their tails between their legs? Today, I've attracted so many people to watch the show. You may be shameless, but I, Jeffrey, still want my face." As soon as he arrived, Zi Chen saw a middle-aged man with a gloomy face reprimanding Helen's eldest brother. It was unknown whether he was in the wrong, but Helen's eldest brother stood there silently. The people around were pointing and gossiping. They were all watching the show. Zi Chen looked at the ring. There stood a young man who first kicked the Qian brothers and then stepped on Arwa. You idiot! Of all the people you could provoke, you chose to provoke me! Jeffrey's foot stepped on Arwa's face. You can't even last 10 moves. How dare you show off in front of me? Now kneel. Then he looked at the Qian brothers. And you too kneel. The Qian brothers' eyes were spitting fire. They staggered to their feet. They preferred death to humiliation. Seeing this, Jeffrey immediately appeared in front of the two men and kicked them one after another, sending them flying. When the two fell to the edge of the ring, they coughed up blood again. Jeffrey's figure flashed and kicked the 3 of them together. He looked down at them. Now kneel. Arwa spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were fixed on Jeffrey. I lost. You can kill me if you want, but you want me to kneel? Dream on. Jeffrey glanced around and said, sarcastically, is that so? So courageous? Bang! With a kick, the sound of bones breaking was heard. Arwa flew more than 30 meters away. Jeffrey strode forward and stepped on Arwa's chest. Kneel or die? No. Arwa's mouth was full of blood, but his eyes were firm. Jeffrey, this is our fault. We can make up for it. Let them go first. They've already lost. There's no need to humiliate them. Helen's eldest brother finally spoke. What? Their faces are faces, but my Jeffrey's face isn't. Jeffrey looked at Helen and said disdainfully, I'm not looking down on you, Helen. Do you think you can compensate me with something at your level? Besides, what right do you have to ask for compensation in front of me? Jeffrey said coldly, Your people initiated the challenge. My brother was only passive. Now that he won, all you want is for the 3 of them to kneel and apologize. It's such a small request. How can you not agree? Jeffrey, don't go too far. A hint of anger appeared on Helen's face. Too far? What? You want to challenge me too? How about I treat you as a Heaven's Choice realm cultivator, and we can fight? Jeffrey smiled disdainfully. If you don't have the guts, then get out of here. Don't delay us from getting justice. They're so aggressive. Why don't you stop them? Zi Chen looked at the scene in front of him and was puzzled. Big Beard said helplessly, There's no way to stop a fight between people of the same level. If you insist on stopping them, you'll be breaking the rules. Jeffrey has been targeting you with words to provoke you into attacking. You're no match for him at your current level. Zi Chen said, So there's no problem with a fight between people of the same level. The bearded man nodded and said, That's right, but this Jeffron... Chapter 4903. Crack. Alva's ribs were broken. Jaffirian smiled ferociously. Kneel or not? Alva clenched his teeth and looked at him. Over my dead body. The Qian brothers struggled to get up, but Jaffirian raised his hand and shot out 2 beams of energy. The 2 fell down again. Then I'll fulfill your wish. Jaffirian's eyes flashed with killing intent. Seeing this, Helen was about to agree to Jaffirian's unfair competition. She couldn't just watch her 3 subordinates die. Just then, an indifferent voice suddenly sounded. Isn't it just a competition? I'll do it. As soon as he finished speaking, Zi Chen was already standing in the arena. After Big Beard's explanation, Zi Chen understood why he called him here. It was just a battle of the same level. There was no reason to back down. Moreover, the team had been good to him. There was no reason to sit back and watch. Jaffirian looked at Zi Chen with a sneer. Another one. You want to kneel in front of me too? The others also saw Zi Chen, and their expressions changed. Not long ago, many of them had seen Zi Chen. It was said that he had obtained something good. Unfortunately, Master Black Dragon appeared and didn't get anything out of him. It's just a competition. Why do you have to make it like this? Let them go first. I'll fight you. Looking at the state of Alva and the other 2, Zi Chen was unhappy. He had never seen People beaten up like this in a competition. Japhirian sneered. Who do you think you are? How dare you order me around? He clenched his fist as if he was clenching it. Be careful. Alva squeezed out 2 words through gritted teeth. But it was still too late. A mysterious force appeared around Zi-Chin like a stream of water. The next moment, this force turned into a transparent palm and grabbed Zi-Chin firmly. It's over. Another one. He's too careless. Does he really think he's made of mud? This is the 4th one. Helen's team of initial level has been wiped out. Without the initial level, is he going to fight the intermediate level? Sighs could be heard from the crowd. Many people were shaking their heads and lamenting Zi-Chen's carelessness. Helen's expression also changed. Originally, when she saw Zi-Chen go up, she actually had some hope. After all, before Zi-Chen had advanced, he had defeated an initial realm expert beside Pieser. Who would have thought that he would follow in the footsteps of the other 3 in a single exchange? The bearded man was also stunned. Then he patted his head in annoyance. This was troublesome. He had also implicated Zi-Chen. Wang. The energy around Zi-Chen vibrated as he tried to break free from the shackles of energy, but to no avail. This energy was very strange. It was as soft as water, but it was full of strength and was very difficult to break free from. Jeffrey Ong walked toward Zi-Chen, his eyes full of disdain. Boy, you think you can fight me? Zi-Chen glanced at him, and a beam of light shot towards Japhirian. It was a ring that Zi-Chen had spent a lot of points to exchange for. The ring glowed and immediately flew towards Japhirian. Japhirian still had a sneer on his face. With a wave of his hand, a layer of energy appeared and trapped the ring. This was his power, and it was extremely mystical. But in the next moment, the ring trembled and suddenly enlarged. It broke free from the energy seal and smashed towards Japhirian. The 2 sides were so close that Japhirian's expression changed and he had to retreat. At the same time, another beam of light shot towards Japhirian. It was a black spear that he had obtained after destroying Lun Duo's body. It was like a black lightning bolt. Japhirian retreated again and again. During this time, he opened his mouth and spat out a beam of sword light. It flew out like a rainbow and hit the ring. Clang! The ring flew back. Looking at Japhirian's sword light again, there were some fine cracks. There was a touch of anger in his eyes. He stretched out his hand and pushed forward. An energy barrier appeared, and the incoming black spear was blocked by the barrier. Zi-Chen had not condensed this weapon yet, so it was very weak. He was just using it to make up the numbers. The real killing move was then revealed. The broken sword, which had merged with the slaughter spirit, made a sharp turn in the arena and instantly pierced through Japhirian's chest. Puff! A wisp of blood splattered. The broken sword flew back to Zi-Chen's side and quietly floated there. Such a scene shocked everyone outside the arena. Zi-Chen was clearly trapped by the energy, but he was still able to use such a killing move and injure Japhirian. This was very frightening. It should be noted that when the 3 of them were trapped, they were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Below the arena, Japhirian's expression also changed. Looking at his brother's wound, a tyrannical emotion brewed in his eyes. Helen breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that the crisis had been resolved. The winner has been decided. Can you let him go now? Zi-Chen, who was still trapped by the energy, looked at Japhirian calmly. The previous blow had only pierced through his chest, which was not fatal. But if it had hit his brain, he would have died. Therefore, Zi-Chen had shown mercy in this battle. The winner had been decided. Japhirian lowered his head and looked at the bleeding wound. His eyes gradually showed a hint of cruelty. You dare hurt me? Zi-Chen frowned slightly. His opponent didn't seem to be willing to admit defeat. You son of a B*TCH, how dare you hurt me? Japhirian raised his hand and clenched it fiercely. Go to hell. Zi-Chen felt a terrifying force gushing out from the seal around him, forming a terrible squeezing force. He was going to crush his own body. "Stop, you've already lost." Zi Qin heard the bearded man's angry shout. "Jafferian, you've already lost." Then came Helen's voice, but these voices obviously could not save him. He had to save himself now. The ring turned into a ray of light and rushed towards Jafferian for the second time. The black spear that had fallen to the ground flew up again and turned back to attack. The broken sword in front of Zi Qin also surged with ripples at this moment. Endless killing intent surged. Feeling the pressure getting stronger, Zi Qin's eyes became cold. "Do you want to fight to the death?" "Son of AB *th, I'll kill you." Jafferian's eyes were full of cruel killing intent. Whoosh! The ring flew back and directly enlarged, falling towards Jafferian's head, trying to trap him. Buzz! Rays of light flew out from behind Jafferian and coiled around the ring like spiritual snakes. The black spear that followed was also blocked. The ring was vibrating rapidly, shattering the attacks that were blocking it. Whoosh! Zi Qin's eyes flashed with a cold light. The broken sword attacked again. This time it did not change direction, but the closest distance between them. The furious Jafferian stretched out his hand and pushed again. A dozen layers of energy, light, formed a protection in front of him. Obviously, he intended to use this energy to consume Zi Qin's attacks again and again. "You're courting death." As the broken sword approached, the dozen layers of protection were instantly pierced. Then, the broken sword pierced Jafferian's palm and his shoulder. At the same time, the ring turned into a ray of light and flew towards Zi Qin. It did not slow down. Instead, it fell on Zi Qin's body with a powerful attack. Boom! Chapter 4904. After escaping, Zi Qin looked at Jafferian indifferently. "You've lost." Jafferian, who was bleeding profusely, became even more violent, and the energy around him surged wildly. Obviously, he wouldn't admit defeat so easily. Zi Qin stomped his foot, and a ripple spread out in all directions. Awol and the other two, who were still in the ring, were lifted up by a force and slowly fell out of the ring. Luo Xiao and Big Beard hurried forward to check on them. If it were before, Jafferian would have stopped Zi Qin. But now, the humiliation of defeat made him unable to care about anything else. He only had Zi Qin in his eyes. "Die!" he growled like a beast. Streams of energy came from all directions, forming a white airflow, trying to seal Zi Qin. Whoosh! A light flashed under Zi Qin's feet, and like a bolt of lightning, he appeared on the other side of the ring. "I'll warn you again. You've lost. Back off quickly." Standing behind Jafferian, Zi Qin's voice was cold. Jafferian turned around, and the energy around him surged wildly. Streams of energy turned into spears in front of him, filling the whole ring in the blink of an eye. "Die!" Countless spears whistled forward, straight at Zi Qin, leaving him no room to dodge. The ring in front of Zi Qin shook and rotated at high speed, stirring up terrifying ripples, blocking the spears in front of him. "I'll warn you again. You've lost, or don't blame me for being rude." Zi Qin's eyes revealed a hint of killing intent. Below, Helen also looked at Jafferian. "Do you want to see your brother die?" Jafferian stared at the ring. "As long as my family can stand, we won't admit defeat." Hearing his words, Zi Qin no longer had any worries. He activated the thunder escape, and like a bolt of lightning, he appeared behind Jafferian. "Die!" Jafferian reacted quickly, turning around and throwing out a punch. Zi Qin sidestepped and dodged his opponent's fist. At the same time, he reached out and grabbed his opponent's arm. With a loud boom, the arena shook and Jafferian was sprawled on the ground. Jafferian, who had fallen to the ground, was bleeding from the corner of his mouth, but the killing intent in his eyes was even stronger. Zi Qin rushed forward and stomped on Jafferian's arm, breaking it with a crack. Jafferian let out a blood-curdling scream. Below the stage, Killing intent surged in Jeffrey's eyes. Everyone's expression froze. Previously, they had thought that Zi-Chun was going to lose. They hadn't expected the tables to turn like this. Looking at Jeffrey's state, it was obvious that he didn't have the strength to fight back. Crack! Jaffirian's other arm was also broken by Zi-Chin. Zi-Chin didn't ask if his opponent admitted defeat. Instead, he exerted more force, this time aiming to break Jeffrin's legs. Zi-Chen's eyes were indifferent, without the slightest hint of emotion. To be able to reach this stage, which one of them would be a good person? Who hasn't killed countless people? But at this moment, sensing Zi-Chen's indifference, everyone was still afraid. He was truly ruthless when he didn't say a single word. It was much more terrifying than when Jaffirian had tortured Alva and the other two. Jeffrey glanced at the crowd. "Bastard, stop!" Seeing that Jaffirian's legs were about to be broken, a shout rang out. A person quickly rushed onto the arena. He didn't try to save Jaffirian, but instead attacked Zi-Chin. "It's just a fight. Do you want to kill me?" A powerful pressure descended, and the aura of the Middle Realm filled the arena. Zi-Chin turned around and struck out with his palm. With a loud boom, he borrowed the force of the impact to retreat to the edge of the arena. A man stood where he had been standing. He didn't even look at Jaffirian. Instead, he coldly stared at Zi-Chin. "Kid, do you want to kill me?" "I gave him a chance," Zi-Chin said. "You dare talk back?" The man flew into a rage and punched out. A powerful pressure appeared in the air. The fist was like a blazing flame flying toward Zi-Chin. The ring in front of Zi-Chin appeared again. Layers of spinning surged, and with another boom, the ring was sent flying. "Kid, you're too arrogant. How dare you ignore the rules? Let me teach you a lesson." The flames dissipated. The man tapped his foot and approached Zi-Chin. Zi-Chin wasn't afraid at all. His body turned into a bolt of lightning and tangled with the Middle Realm cultivator. The two people in the arena were like two bolts of lightning flying around the arena. From time to time, there would be a boom, and layers of ripples would spread out. There was a hint of anxiety in the big, bearded man's eyes. He was about to enter the arena. Helen slowly shook her head. At this moment, her expression was very serious. Something was not right about this matter. She looked around, trying to see something, but she didn't find anything. In the arena, the two people instantly separated. Zi-Chen retreated to the edge of the arena, blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. "Zi-Chen, are you okay?" the bearded man asked worriedly. Zi-Chen wiped the blood from his mouth and shook his head. "I'm fine." "Hey, what do you mean by that?" The bearded man shouted at the Middle Realm cultivator on the stage. "Can't you see that your guy broke the rules first?" "I only saw him use the excuse of sparring to kill someone," the Middle Realm cultivator said indifferently. "Your guy was even worse," the bearded man said angrily. "Jeffrin only made him kneel. He didn't go so far as to kill him. What's a small thing like kneeling compared to a life?" The Middle Realm cultivator looked coldly at Zi-Chen. "So he broke the rules first." The bearded man wanted to say something else, but Zi-Chen raised a hand and cut him off. "There's no point in reasoning with these people. If he thinks kneeling is nothing, then I'll make him kneel next." "You?" the Middle Realm cultivator sneered. "I'll do it." The bearded man shouted, preparing to fly toward the arena. Swish! A beam of light suddenly appeared in front of him. A man blocked the bearded man's path. "Don't you think it's too much to ask for 2 against 1? "Bullshit," the bearded man said angrily. "I'm going to beat him up. It's only 1 against 1. If you want to fight, wait until they're done, then I'll come and fight you. But right now you can't go up." Zi-Chin is only an initial cultivator. How can he fight a Middle Realm cultivator? He asked for it. Who told him to break the rules? The man said carelessly. "And this is the price he has to pay for breaking the rules. At this moment, a terrifying aura suddenly came from the ring. The space behind the middle realm cultivator twisted violently, and a spotted tiger appeared. Its pair of cold eyes stared straight at Zichen, as if it was staring at the Grim Reaper. Zichen felt as if all the energy in his body was being suppressed by an invisible force. Even his breathing became hurried. The middle realm cultivator gave him a dangerous feeling. That's a demonic flame tiger. Jose is completely enraged. I can't believe he used this move. Looks like Jose doesn't want to waste time. This initial cultivator is finished. Outside the stands, the expressions of the others changed. In this situation, Zichen clearly had no chance of winning. At the back of the crowd, a young man watching the fight sneered. Whether or not he gets a treasure, we'll know in a moment of life and death. Buzz. Chapter 4905. A giant tree appeared from the space behind Zichen. This was the Thunder Tree. Lightning flashed, and its branches were thick and strong. Thunder leaf was dense, like a huge and towering city wall. It was also known as the Thunder Tree. As it appeared in the sky, it released a dazzling light of thunder. The pressure that came from the demonic tiger was completely blocked outside. At the same time, a sense of danger emerged from Zichen's body. Below the arena, many people's expressions changed. Jose's demon tiger of heavenly flame seemed to be real. It growled uneasily, and its cold eyes became alert. Yusef's expression changed as well. He had thought that he could easily crush his opponent with his middle level of cultivation. He did not expect his opponent to have such means. A strange light flashed in the eyes of the young people outside the crowd. They murmured in surprise, "Is this some kind of technique?" Alva and the Chien brothers temporarily adjusted their breathing and then looked at the arena. At this moment, Zichen's eyes were cold and his condensed aura exuded a sense of terror. The giant tree was like some kind of ancient existence, making people feel extremely oppressed. "I don't care what you are. You broke the rules and you have to die." Yusef shouted and clapped his hands together. The demonic tiger behind him roared and charged forward. As if stepping in the void, every step caused the void to tremble and distort. Boundless fire energy stirred up layers of ripples, causing the space to tremble. Buzz. The thunder tree behind Zichen also trembled, as if stirring up the entire sky. Then the thunder tree, like an ancient mountain, rushed toward the demon tiger. Boom! The moment the two collided, the void distorted violently and a violent roar sounded. The arena began to tremble, and rays of light lit up from all sides. The nearby formation patterns were automatically activated, dissolving the residual power of the battle. In a head-on confrontation, the thunder tree was not weaker than the demon tiger. Every time the two sides collided, a terrifying aftershock sputtered out. The people around were shocked. An initial realm cultivator had such powerful combat strength. "I'm fire, you're wood. I'm your natural nemesis," Jose said coldly. "Watch me ignite you." Boundless flames burned on the demon tiger's body. It opened its mouth and spat out like a dragon. A large amount of flames fell on the thunder tree, trying to ignite it. Whoa! Lightning flashed on the surface of the thunder tree as countless bolts of lightning swam around it. Among these bolts of lightning, there were also thunder flames. This was no ordinary tree. It was the symbol of the Saint Spirit Realm, one of the 5 ancient spirits. Rumble! Thunderbolts exploded in all directions and powerful energy surged out. The demonic tiger began to retreat in defeat, and the flame energy around its body quickly dimmed. Outside the ring, everyone was shocked. Jussi, who was at the middle level, was actually at a disadvantage in this competition. Damn it! Seeing that the flames were of no use, Jose's eyes flashed with anger. He had lost a lot of face for not being able to suppress an initial realm cultivator. With a loud shout, The flames on the demonic tiger's body burned brightly again. Then he formed a seal with his hands and turned into a ray of light that entered the demonic tiger's body. As if they had fused together, the flames on the demonic tiger's body began to turn black, and an extremely dangerous aura emerged. "Brett, I want you dead." The demonic tiger's eyes became even sharper. It spoke in human language and stepped forward in the void. Demonic flames surged. Looking at this scene, Zi-Chen's expression did not change at all. He only said 4 words. "Divine Ancestor Prison." This was the spell that Old Man Bai had given him. Zi-Chen guessed that this should be the strongest spell in the Saint Spirit realm, and it should have been given to the first person. However, due to an unforeseen event, Old Man Bai had opened a door for him when he took away his trial token. The tree of the lightning ancestor, which was known as the spirit guardian, stretched out its thousands of branches and leaves, as if forming a strange divine pattern. Infinite light bloomed in the air, and a vast aura swept through the surroundings. Everyone subconsciously raised their hands to block the light. The demonic tiger let out an angry roar and rushed towards the tree of the lightning ancestor. But in the next moment, the roar turned into a scream. The branches and leaves that resembled divine runes landed on its body and forcibly sealed its power. The demonic tiger's huge body shrank. The original black flames had been suppressed and disappeared. After its body returned to its normal size, its body exploded. When the bursts of energy dissipated, everyone saw Jussi's body fall to the ground, his aura weak. He had been defeated. Everyone was shocked. Jussi, who was in the middle level, had been defeated even after using the heavenly flame demonic tiger. Zi-Chen looked at Jussi with a murderous look in his eyes. His figure flashed, and he disappeared from where he stood. "I admit defeat." At this moment, Jussi, who felt that something was wrong, gritted his teeth and exclaimed, "Bang!" But it was too late. Zi-Chen's foot landed, and his body flew out of the arena, drawing a line of blood in the air. As for Jeffrey had seen that the situation was not good and had taken him down. Jussi, who had flown out of the arena, coughed up blood again, and his eyes gradually turned cold. Zi-Chen said indifferently, "You should thank me for not killing you, and at the same time, thank me for not making you kneel." "Very well, I will remember you." Jussi snorted coldly. He had lost a lot of face today. Zi-Chen said in a cold voice, "The next time you want to fight me, you'll have to put up a good fight, or I will kill you." What a big tone. "Let me, Quill, fight you." At this moment, another ray of light fell on the arena. The aura surging around this person was stronger than Jussi's. He was obviously in the higher level. Zi-Chen glanced at the other party. "I will fight you." At this moment, Helen came to the arena. Higher level against higher level. "Let me see what you have." A broadsword appeared in Helen's hand, and her eyes were full of coldness. She was very angry that such a thing had happened today. Quill looked at Helen with a touch of fear in his eyes. Although they were both in the higher level, he knew that he could not beat Helen. "Helen, you are a captain. How can you bully a team member? I will play with you." Jeffrey flew toward the arena. At this moment, a cold voice suddenly came from the depths. "You can't beat an initial level, and you can't beat an intermediate level. If you can't beat an advanced level, are you going to send out a Heaven's Chosen One? Don't be shameless. Hurry up and disperse." Jeffrey's face changed, and he retreated to his original place. He cupped his fist in the direction of the voice. This was the voice of Lord Black Dragon. "Let's go." The next moment, Jeffrey snorted coldly and turned to leave with his people. There was no more excitement to watch, and the others also dispersed. However, after today's battle, they remembered Zi-Chen. That cautious little guy had grown to such a level in such a short time. On the arena, Zi-Chen's eyes moved quickly, staring at a certain place. A young man stood there, looking at Zi-Chen. The two looked at each other, and the young man smiled slightly. Zi Chen's eyes gradually turned cold. He recognized the other party. It was the one who had obtained the biggest golden bell. Chapter 4906. Zi Chen's eyes grew colder and colder. He had already guessed the whole story. The young man who'd obtained the biggest bell, like Pico, also wanted to know what he'd obtained from it. That was why he'd done this. However, the other party was more cautious, or perhaps more cunning. He didn't take the initiative to show himself, but instead chose to use this roundabout method to force him to make a move. Swish! Alva arrived at the arena. Despite his heavy injuries, he seemed to have recovered quite a bit. He reached out and hammered Zichen. "Amazing," he said in admiration. "You helped us vent our anger." Zichen didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If Alva knew the truth, who knew how he'd feel? The Qian brothers also walked over and thanked Zichen. Seeing the sincerity in their eyes, Zichen smiled wryly. "Perhaps the three of you were implicated by me." The three were stunned, but they quickly understood what Zichen meant. They smiled wryly as well. Although we were used, we couldn't hold back and jumped into the pit on purpose. "We can't blame you." Alva clenched his fists. "We can only blame ourselves for being weak. If we had battle prowess like yours, Zichen, even if they came looking for trouble, we'd be able to beat the crap out of them." The Qian brothers nodded. It was true that they'd been impulsive, but the main reason for that was because they were weak. If you know you're weak, then focus on your cultivation. Helen walked over. "In the past, no one paid any attention to us, so we all lost the will to cultivate. Now that we've encountered one life-or-death crisis after another, if we don't stay vigilant, we'll just have to wait for death next time." They all nodded. They all understood the principle of the weak being prey to the strong. Up until now, they'd always been the strong ones. However, there were always other strong ones, and now they were the weak ones. In the past, Peace City had been peaceful without any disputes. But recently, it had become much less peaceful. "Everyone go back and cultivate. Zichen, you too. It's best if you don't go out for a while. I refuse to believe that trouble will come looking for you if you stay in your room." Helen glanced at everyone. Zichen nodded. "There seems to be some problems with my previous technique. I need to study it carefully." When Alva heard this, he said in shock, "There's a problem in suppressing someone at a higher level. What kind of sorcery is that?" "It's probably the most powerful technique in my world." This was Zichen's guess, but in all likelihood it was the truth. "Both are ultimate techniques. Why is yours so extraordinary?" Big Beard said, "I'm actually a bit curious about the world you live in. A world I've never heard of actually has such a powerful technique." Alva and the others nodded in agreement. Both were the most powerful techniques, so why was Zichen's so outstanding? "All right, if you have time, we can talk after you break through. If we continue to stay here, who knows what kind of trouble will appear." Helen interrupted their conversation and signaled for them to return to their cultivation. The group of 7 turned back along the original path. Along the way, the people they met would look at Zichen curiously. After returning to his room and closing the door, Zichen sat down and thought back to the battle earlier. If he had used the divine Rune Dao sword, he would have won much more easily, but he would have been exposed. Before, Zichen hadn't guessed that this match was intentionally targeted. He had simply assumed it was a drunken brawl. Only after Lord Black Dragon's words did he realize that the other side had been testing him over and over again. It seemed that many people believed that he had acquired something good, and yet the young man who had acquired the largest golden bell still continued to test him. Clearly, he believed that he had acquired something even more valuable than the golden bell. The divine Rune Dao sword was a secret. Zichen didn't believe that they knew about it. This test was actually more of a guess. As long as he didn't take out the divine Rune Dao sword, No one could be certain that he had acquired something good. But in the end, hiding it wasn't a solution. The golden bell was a supreme treasure of the Tao of divine runes. He had to get it back. In the future, he would definitely cross paths with those 5 again. But right now, there was no point in thinking about such things. The most important thing was to get stronger. All of the advantages he had had in the saint spirit world had disappeared here. It was as if everyone was standing on the same side, and the difference in power between them wasn't that great. The reason why Chen had been able to surpass levels and win was also because of the saint spirit world's techniques. It wasn't because he was extraordinary. So, Chen had to find something that could save his life. Now that he couldn't obtain enough points to exchange for supreme treasures, he could only rely on himself. Chen took out the divine seal and continued to condense the elementary divine runes. He cultivated and fought at the same time. The ring was very good, but it couldn't greatly increase his attack power. The same went for the black spear. The slaughter spirit was very special. It was a great killing weapon. It was just that Chen couldn't find a way to make it grow quickly. The divine ancestors' imprisonment needed to be comprehended step by step. Today he had won because of this. But next time it might not be the same. Suddenly, Chen thought of the black stone. The reason why he had such an extraordinary harvest last time was because of the black stone. He held the black stone in his hand, but he still couldn't sense anything special about it. Chen held the black stone in his hand. As he pondered, his mind gradually calmed down. A loud voice rang out in his mind. He couldn't hear what the voice was, but he felt like he was enlightened. Chen was in a strange state, half asleep, half dreaming. The black stone in his hand vibrated gently. Chen's body also resonated with it, and ripples spread out. In a daze, Chen seemed to see a great hall. It was right in front of him. He wanted to reach out and touch it, but he couldn't. He kept moving forward, but he kept a distance from the great hall. The great hall was grand, vast, and had an ancient aura. It was like a god standing there examining him. Chen! Chen! Chen gradually regained consciousness. He opened his eyes. There was a blank look in his eyes. I fell asleep? He should have been cultivating. He didn't expect to fall asleep. Chen! The voice rang out again. It was Arwa. Chen removed the divine glyphs, put away the black stone, and opened the door. Looking at Arwa, he asked curiously, "Your injuries healed so quickly?" "What injuries?" Arwa walked in, cocking his head as he looked around Chen's room. "Weren't you injured just now?" Chen said. "We just came back from the arena. Have you forgotten?" Arwa suddenly turned his head, staring at Chen as though he were some kind of freak. Chen was taken aback. "What is that wrong? When you said just now, you meant half a month ago." "What?" Chen's face flickered. Chapter 4907. Arwa tilted his head and looked around Chen's room, as if looking for something. He didn't see any change in Chen's expression. "I say, have you become muddle-headed from your cultivation? It's been half a month since the last time." Arwa didn't even turn his head. "There was an oppressive fluctuation coming from your room. It was very uncomfortable. Did something happen?" He looked everywhere, including under the bed. He didn't find anything out of the ordinary. "I sensed an abnormal aura, so I came to call you." "What happened?" Chen shook his head. "I'm not sure. I was cultivating. Could it be that it wasn't your room, but the abnormality next door?" Arwa laughed. "But I really admire you. You don't know how long you've been cultivating. If I were as diligent as you, I'd have broken through long ago." "You haven't broken through yet." Chen looked at Arwa and found that he was still in the initial level. Arwa laughed bitterly. "This is breaking through. How could it be so easy? Even if I get resources this time, it'll still take some time." Chen walked to the table, wanting to pour a cup of water for Arwa. But just as he picked up the teacup, he heard a bang. The teacup in his hand exploded. Zi Chen's expression changed. The teapot in his other hand also exploded. "What happened to you?" Arwa looked at him. Zi Chen shook his head. He was also in a daze. Arwa looked at Zi Chen, worry in his eyes. "Are you sure you're okay? You don't seem to be in a good condition." "I don't know what happened either. I was cultivating, but I felt like I was sleeping. I only woke up when I heard your voice." "Something must have happened to my body," Zi Chen said. "Then check it out and see what's going on. I'll go back first. Call me if you need anything." Arwa said goodbye and left, closing the door for Zi Chen on the way. Zi Chen sat down again. He was still in a daze and urgently needed to know what had happened. When he sensed his body, Zi Chen found something strange. First of all, his soul power turned golden and appeared in his sea of consciousness like a lake. Compared to the soul power of the past, the soul that had turned into a golden lake was much more vigorous and powerful. Moreover, it had become much more condensed. Zi Chen guessed that it had something to do with the Tao fruit he had obtained back then. After all, if one wanted to form divine imprints, a powerful soul was essential. Soon, however, Zi Chen noticed that his body had undergone some changes. His fleshly body seemed to have become stronger. His body was brimming with strength. No wonder he was unable to control his strength properly earlier. However, Zi Chen didn't understand what was going on with this change. He felt as if he had just slept and had a rare dream. In the dream, he saw an unreachable hall. It seemed as if he had been competing with the hall and couldn't get close to it. After a while, Zi Chen opened his eyes, but he still didn't know why his body had changed. Tao fruit or Blackstone? He remembered that he was thinking about something and then fell asleep in a daze. Xiao! Zi Chen's soul power moved, and the broken sword revolved around his body at high speed, bringing with it an ear-piercing, whistling sound. His soul power had turned into a golden lake. The most obvious change was that the broken sword was faster and Wei Li was stronger. At this moment, he hadn't used the slaughter spirit yet. Once he did, it would be even stronger. This meant that his combat strength had increased. Although he didn't understand, it was a good thing. Zi Chen used his divine seal to isolate the room and took out the divine Rune Dao sword. The divine Rune Dao sword shone brilliantly. At a glance, it seemed as if there were countless divine imprints shining, dazzling the eyes. After looking at it for a long time, one would feel dizzy. He used his soul power to control the divine Rune Dao sword that had already been refined. The divine Rune Dao sword let out a buzzing sound, and countless divine imprints rippled out in all directions. The divine imprints that Zi Chen had just isolated the room showed signs of collapsing. Seeing this, Zi Chen immediately put away the divine Rune Dao sword. As expected of a supreme treasure of the Tao of divine inscriptions, it was much more powerful than a single golden bell. Most likely, only the combination of 5 golden bells would be able to contend against it. After putting away the divine Rune Dao sword, Zi Chen took out the black stone and used his soul power to examine it. He still didn't find anything, so Zi Chen didn't think about anything else. He just treated it as a special object for enlightenment. Soon, he entered a meditative state. This time, the scene in the dream didn't appear because Zi Chen wasn't cultivating. He was comprehending the divine ancestors' prison-crushing technique. He didn't know if it was because of the black stone, but now his senses were sharper and his understanding of the divine ancestors' prison-crushing technique was also deepening. Only when the door was knocked a second time and Arwa's voice sounded did Zi Chen open his eyes. Time passed quickly, and Zi Chen believed that it definitely wasn't a moment ago as he had thought. Opening the door, Zi Chen asked, "Did I disturb you again?" Arwa shook his head and then walked in with his head lowered. Seeing his depressed mood, Zi Chen asked, "Something happened?" Arwa nodded and said, "The immortal spell world is gone." "What?" Chun looked at Arwa. In Peace City, there had always been rumors about the disappearance of the immortal spell world, and every time, everyone would laugh and joke about it. "A month ago, we went to explore the world. It was the place where you could go without any obstructions. A long time indeed passed." Arwa sighed and said that was the divine rune world, and the divine rune race lived there. They were born with a keen sense of divine runes and were a very powerful race. And then Chin asked, but he had a bad feeling. Arwa said dejectedly, "The divine rune world belonged to the immortal spell world, but the divine rune world was destroyed and the people inside died." Chen frowned slightly and said, "From what you're saying, the immortal spell world isn't just one world. Even if the divine rune world is lost, it can't make the entire immortal spell world disappear, right?" "That's what I thought before, but in this month we discovered a few more broken worlds. After verification, we found that they were all worlds in the immortal spell world. So, everyone unanimously came to the conclusion that the immortal spell world is gone, completely gone, and we will never be able to reach that place, and we will never be able to return. We are trapped here forever." Chen's expression suddenly changed, because if the immortal spell world really disappeared, then everyone's hope would be extinguished. Didn't this mean that everyone would change their original thoughts and turn this trial realm into a new immortal spell realm? Swish! Chen stood up with an ugly expression on his face. "What's wrong with you?" "I have to go back." This matter could not be delayed. He had to discuss it with the two old men, and at the same time ask about the specific situation. As for the accuracy of Arwa's information, Chan was still certain that it was the supervisors of the other trial realms. "If you go out now, aren't you worried that they will come after you?" Arwa asked. "I can't care." Chapter 4908. Seeing Chan leave, Arwa shouted again, but Chen had already disappeared. Chen was definitely in a dangerous situation now. Everyone was eyeing him covetously. Arwa hurriedly left the room. Chen was a little anxious. He didn't expect things to turn out like this. His previous guesses had come true. But why did the immortal spell realm disappear? What about Gushan? For so many years, he was the only one who went to the immortal spell realm. Why didn't he return when the immortal spell realm disappeared? Before he left the city, Arwa followed him. Besides him, there was also Big Beard, Luo Shao, and the Chen brothers. "Why are you all here?" Chen looked at them. "We heard that you're leaving the city. We'll go with you." Big Beard said, "We can take care of each other." "No need, really. I'll be back soon." Chen felt a surge of warmth in his heart. "Don't worry. It'll be fine." Big Beard and the others were a little skeptical. "It's really fine. I'll be back soon. With my speed, there shouldn't be many who can catch up to me." Big Beard and the others were still worried. They said that they wanted to send Chen out of the city. Outside the city, Chen turned into a ray of light and flew toward the horizon. After using the lightning escape technique, even Big Beard couldn't catch up to Chen's speed. With such speed, there's no need to worry. Seeing Chen disappear into the distance, everyone relaxed. If they really encountered danger, they could still run if they couldn't beat him. If they encountered someone who could suppress Chen in speed, even if they followed him, they wouldn't be of much help. They turned back and returned to the city. Behind a mountain peak, Pieser watched Chen leave. A cold light flashed in his eyes. "I've waited for half a month. Let's see where you can run this time." He followed him personally. No one would have thought that a high-level cultivator of the trial would be waiting outside the city. However, Pieser soon discovered that Chen, who had been moving forward, had disappeared. This made his expression change. He was a little stunned. He continued to chase, but there were still no clues. He had really disappeared. At this moment, Zi Chen had been drawn to an independent space where the two old men, black and white, were. When Zi Chen told them what he knew, the two old men's expressions turned ugly. They were not surprised, which meant that they had known about this for a long time. Senior, I'm worried that they will change their minds. Perhaps even Peace City will no longer be peaceful. This was what Zi Chen was worried about, so he had to come back. Balek said, although we have discovered some broken worlds in the immortal spell world, this doesn't mean that the immortal spell world has truly disappeared. This is the guess of some people. Even without these broken worlds, they still feel that the immortal spell realm has disappeared. Zi Chen said, in that case, there are still some people who believe in the existence of the immortal spell world. That's right. They don't want to see a large-scale massacre erupt. Carrying on the responsibility of the past, they don't want to deliberately cause misery and suffering, so they've always been very conservative. Balek said in a deep voice, as long as their willpower remains firm, there will be no problem. Zi Chen was still a little worried. But what if they come here and get clues from others? The demons from our world are just new here. They're no match for them. This is also what we're currently considering. The two of us plan to use the rules and the help of some old friends to forcefully isolate this place so that others can't come here. Balek said, that includes you who will be next. However, this space can't be independent for long. One day they will still come here. Zi Chen nodded and understood what Balek meant. In the end, he still had to be strong. What the two old men could do now was to protect the trial realm that belonged to them while Zi Chen was still weak. Senior, if my friends come in, please take care of them. Before leaving, Zi Chen pleaded with the two old men. The last time he came, he had left behind a trial token. This time, he would not be able to come back. The two old men nodded. Blacklake said, you have to be careful too. Although it's important to be strong, the most fundamental thing is to stay alive. Zi Chen bowed solemnly to the two old men. Go. The rise and fall of the Saint Spirit realm will fall on your shoulders. Zi Chen bid farewell and left. He alone shouldered the lives of countless creatures in a world. He felt a huge responsibility. Whoosh! Light flashed, and Zi Chen reappeared in the air. At the moment, even he did not know where he was. He began to turn back the way he came and used the thunder escape. The world suddenly lit up, and a dangerous aura approached. Zi Chen, who was moving forward, stopped instantly. A light flew past him. Looking at the traces left in the air, Zi Chen's expression changed. He stared ahead. A figure appeared. Kid, where did you go? It was Pieser. Were you following me? Zi Chen asked instead of answering. Pieser's face had a hint of anger. Tell me, where did you go? Are the people from your world hiding in that place? Zi Chen was glad that he reacted quickly. The two old men would seal the trial realm. Otherwise, it would be troublesome. Not to mention the appearance of the many powerhouses in the immortal Slaughter City. Even Pieser alone would turn the world upside down. Whoosh! Zi Chen did not waste time with Pieser. He directly flew forward. He knew his strength. He used the thunder escape to the extreme. Trying to run? Pieser laughed sarcastically. Do you think it's possible? His figure flashed and appeared in front of Zi Chen. His speed was even faster than the thunder escape. Zi Chen's expression changed. He quickly retreated. A light flew out from beside him. It was the broken sword. Do you think you're so great after defeating a middle realm cultivator? Let me tell you, you're still far from being able to challenge a high realm cultivator. Pieser clenched his fist and punched. Infinite light burst out from his fist. Boom! When the broken sword met the fist, it instantly shattered. Zi Chen's expression changed again. He originally wanted to use the broken sword to confuse the other party. When the time was right, he would use the massacre spirit. He did not expect the other party to shatter the broken sword with one punch, disrupting his plan. Buzz! The ring vibrated and flew toward the other party. Piesser punched again. However, the ring did not shatter this time. Instead, it flew back. Zi Chen kept the ring and ran again. However, his speed was far slower than Piesser's. He had just taken on the mission of saving countless lives in the Saint Spirit realm. Now he encountered Piesser and his life was threatened. I can't die here. Zi Chen gritted his teeth. He slashed open the void with his saber and entered. Chapter 4909. Clang! The bell rang and ripples came from the void. They formed terrifying divine runes and swept toward Zi Chen. Zi Chen's expression changed. He used the divine seal to cover his body and quickly retreated. When the divine runes came into contact with the light of the divine seal, they didn't cause any harm to Zi Chen. Holding the golden bell, Piesser entered the void through the crack. His robes and long hair fluttered. Swoosh! Zi Chen held the spear and charged towards Piesser. This was Luen Duo's weapon. Zi Chen had snatched it, and it was quite powerful. Piesser sneered with disdain. He held the bell in his left hand and clenched his right hand into a fist. He punched forward. The dazzling fist landed on the spear. The spear paused for a moment before a powerful force surged. Cracks suddenly appeared on the surface of the spear. They slowly spread throughout the spear, and in the next moment it exploded. Zi Chen's expression changed, and he flew back again. Fragments of the spear flew in all directions and brushed past his face. The broken sword from before and the spear now were all shattered by Piesser's fist. This shocked Zi Chen, and he didn't dare to take out the flowing broken knife. Kid, if you meet other higher realms, you might be able to struggle and make some small waves. But in front of me, you don't even have the right to struggle. Piesser had an arrogant expression. Light flowed around his body, and he released a terrifying aura. His physical body was extraordinarily strong, and his fists were comparable to divine weapons. Although I haven't broken through to the heaven-chosen realm, my physical body has long reached that level. Piesser raised his fist and said confidently, "Of all the things in the world, I only have one fist." As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward. The void trembled, and a resplendent fist radiance came towards him. The ring in front of Zi Chen appeared again. It surged with ripples and blocked in front of him. Boom! The energy shook, and the ring flew back, but didn't shatter. Kid die. A cold voice sounded in Zi Chen's ears. He heard the whistling of the fist. Piesser, who was faster than him, was already in front of him. In a hurry, Zi Chen could only block. Dong! The void shook again, and Zi Chen's body flew backwards. As for Piesser, who originally had a complacent look on his face, his expression changed. This was because his punch actually did not shatter the opponent's bones. One had to know that even a weapon should shatter. Zi Chen also reacted. Not long ago, his body had undergone some changes. His physical body had become much more tyrannical. Could it be that it had reached the point where it was comparable to a weapon? Die! Piesser closed in once again. Zi Chen could only clench his fists and charge forward. The two of them fought fiercely in the void, their bodies transforming into different splendors. Occasionally, there would be a huge tremor. Countless ripples rippled in the void. Zi Chen gradually relaxed from his initial nervousness. His physical body had indeed become incomparably strong. His eyes gradually lit up. It was not impossible to fight this battle. The more Piesser fought, the more shocked he became. His powerful physical body originated from the cultivation methods of his world. In addition, he had obtained many opportunities in the trial grounds countless times. That was why he had the strength he had today. In the past battles, he had always hidden his trump cards, not wanting others to know about them. He did not expect that today, when he used them in front of an initial realm cultivator, he would encounter an existence whose physical body was comparable to his. One had to know that he was an advanced realm cultivator. His opponent was only an initial realm cultivator. After close to 100 exchanges, Zi-Chun used his speed to retreat during one of the exchanges. As the battle continued, the gap between the two sides became apparent. Zi-Chen did not dare to be entangled and turned to run. Seeing Zi-Chen running away, Pieser was relieved. He had really thought that his opponent was a monster. Humph! He snorted and chased after him. In terms of actual speed, he was much faster than Zi-Chen. He was not worried that his opponent would escape. Who would have thought that Zi-Chen, who was in front of him, would suddenly turn around and throw a punch at Pieser? You overestimate yourself. Pieser laughed sarcastically and threw a punch of his own. A terrifying pressure appeared in the void. Zi-Chen had consumed a lot of energy during the battle, but he had not. Just as the two fists were about to collide, a golden light suddenly flew out from Zi-Chen's sea of consciousness. Like a sharp sword, it pierced into Pieser's mind. Ah! At such a close distance, Pieser had no time to react. He let out a scream and retracted his fist, holding his head with both hands. Boom! Zi-Chen's punch landed on Pieser's chest. With a boom, Pieser was sent flying. Whong! The ring vibrated and flew towards Pieser. With a loud bang, it landed on Pieser's head and sent him flying. Just as I thought. Zi-Chen, with blood at the corner of his mouth, had a look of excitement in his eyes. After eating the fruit of Tao, his spiritual power had become very strong, forming a golden lake. Using it now was indeed effective. The ring flew out a second time. This time, Zi-Chen was prepared to trap his opponent, just like when he fought with Luan Duo. At that time, Pieser would be at his mercy. Clang! 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 At this moment, the small golden bell rang. The ripples of the unparalleled Tao surged, forming divine runes that spread out. The ring was stopped 100 feet away. Zi-Chen's expression changed. He wanted to put the ring away. The ring was no longer under his control. It floated in the ripples and trembled continuously, as if it was stuck in a quagmire. Damn it! His expression turned ugly. He did not expect the golden bell to have such an effect. Again, he reached out and touched his forehead. A golden light flew out, turning into a sword that slashed toward Pieser. The sound of a bell reverberated in the air. The divine inscriptions appeared once again, and the soul sword was also blocked 10 zhang away. Seeing this, Zi-Chen did not try anymore. He turned and ran. If not for the golden bell, he might have been able to kill the high-level Pieser. Brat, you're dead this time. However, just a moment later, Pieser's voice rang out from behind. His voice was filled with hatred. Zi-Chun released his soul power to investigate. He found that Pieser was bleeding from his 7 orifices. His aura was not as strong as before, but it was extremely dangerous and terrifying. The golden bell that had saved his life was in his right hand. As for his left hand, he was holding the ring. You're dead this time. The distance between the two of them was closing rapidly. Zi-Chen could only use his soul power to attack again. Clang! The golden bell trembled, forming divine runes that blocked the soul remembrance attack. Let's see what else you have. Pieser said coldly, This time I swear to tear you into pieces and burn your bones to ashes. Pieser, who had never been in such a sorry state, was already furious. Zi-Chen attacked repeatedly, but it was useless. The other party had the golden bell, which could restrain almost all attacks. The distance between the two of them was closing. Zi-Chen's exhaustion was increasing. If he continued running like this, it would be very dangerous. I don't care. I'll give it my all. Zi-Chen's eyes flashed with ruthlessness and decisiveness. He still had one last move. At the same time, he only had one chance to catch his opponent off guard. Chapter 49:10. The moment he saw the fragment, Zi Chen's eyes lit up. Without caring about anything else, he dashed into the fragment. The fragment was a spatial world. It was also the opportunity that everyone here had been searching for. Who would have thought that they would encounter it at this time? Pieser chased closely behind. When he saw Zi Chen enter the fragment, he laughed coldly. That's good too. Easy prey. He immediately dashed into the fragment. As a precaution, the golden bell in his hand vibrated and activated layers of divine inscriptions to protect his body. Indeed, just as he entered, a golden sword light froze in the void. Zi Chen's sneak attack had failed and he had fled far away. The golden bell trembled once more and the golden sword light dissipated. Pieser looked at Zi Chen's fleeing figure, a mocking smile on his face. Zi Chen, you won't be able to escape. He had absolute confidence because the golden bell could restrain everything. As he chased after them, he actually felt a little lucky in his heart. If he had not snatched the golden bell last time, he would have been defeated by Zi Chen, who was only at the initial realm. His opponent's realm was obviously low, but he had a physical body that was not weaker than his and a soul that surpassed his. It must have something to do with the last time. However, this made him even more determined to kill him. There was a dense forest in front of him. After Pieser flew through the forest, he saw some undulating mountains. On these mountains there were many buildings. Some were already dilapidated, while others were still standing. Many years ago, when this world was still complete, this place should have been a sect. In places like this, opportunities usually existed. Pieser released his soul spirit and discovered that the area of this sect was very large. It occupied thousands of mountain peaks and stretched out for countless miles. When he probed with his soul, he even discovered a few places with unusual fluctuations. There must be an opportunity here. His eyes became incomparably bright. He didn't expect that he would coincidentally discover such a miraculous place just by chasing after Zi Chen. All right, let's kill Zi Chen first, then we can slowly explore. Previously, he was flustered and exasperated, but because of this place, his mood gradually improved. At this moment, several mountain peaks suddenly trembled. Following that, divine markings appeared between the mountains and rivers. The scene in front of him suddenly changed. It was as if he had arrived in the void. A god clad in battle armor was currently facing him. His entire body was emitting intense light. What's going on? Pieser's expression changed yet again. At this moment, the divine being raised his weapon and slashed down. The entire space was about to be split into two. The terrifying might caused Pieser to feel the might of the heavens. Boundless fear surfaced in his heart. At this moment, standing in front of the god, he felt as insignificant as an ant. Just as the divine weapon was about to land on him and his body was about to be split into two, the sound of a bell suddenly rang out. The golden bell was sentient and automatically protected its owner. The divine imprints that it emitted seemed to be able to trace the origin of the divine weapon. The terrifying attack of the divine weapon in front of him disappeared, and even the tall god disappeared from Pieser's sight. The scene from before appeared once again. Pieser saw the fleeing Zi Chen. The dozens of mountain peaks beneath his feet exploded with a loud boom. Even the buildings within were reduced to fine powder. Pieser's good mood instantly vanished. He guessed what had happened and immediately shouted, "You wastrel, can't you see the opportunity here? Why did you destroy this place?" However, just as he finished speaking, ripples appeared in the sky above his head. A huge divine pattern appeared. The divine patterns that had been left here previously were activated, and the power of heaven and earth appeared once again. Looking at the rolling black clouds in the sky and the suffocating pressure, Pieser was instantly enraged. This idiot, didn't he know that doing this would completely destroy this place? At the same time, he was also glad. This world had already been destroyed. Even the remnants of the formation were not as strong as before. According to Piacer's guess, the power of the formation was perhaps less than 1/10,000th of its original power. However, this still made him feel an intense sense of danger. Fortunately, the golden bell was indeed an extraordinary treasure. It vibrated continuously, forming divine patterns that rushed towards the sky. Bolts of lightning fell from the sky one after another. It was extremely terrifying and carried with it a vast aura. It wreaked havoc on everything. The divine patterns rushed into the sky like sharp swords, cutting through the lightning. In the next moment, the lightning dissipated. The divine pattern swords rushed into the sky and swept past the divine pattern in the sky. Chi, chi, chi. The strange phenomenon in the sky dissipated, and heaven and earth returned to its original state. Looking down, nearly 100 mountain peaks had disappeared. Who knew how many treasures had been left behind? Chen, I want you dead. Piecer was so angry that he wanted to curse when he saw this messy scene. Subconsciously, he treated every blade of grass and tree here as his personal property. As long as he killed Chen, he would have enough time to come here and search for what he wanted. However, he did not run far before the ground changed again. The mountains and rivers lit up, and the divine patterns that came from the ground were activated. Many years ago, this should have been the foundation of the sect. Now, it was used by Chen to deal with him. The golden bell in Piecer's hand trembled. He was so angry that he shouted, "You idiot, these are all good things. Why did you destroy them?" Chen did not reply. He continued to flee, and in the meantime he activated the divine patterns carved into the ground. On one hand it was to stop Piecer, but on the other hand it was more to destroy. Piecer was mad with anger. Chen, I swear I will kill you. With that he displayed extreme speed. The golden bell rippled continuously. He was like a ray of light, charging straight for Chen. Everywhere he passed, the divine patterns of the mountains and rivers trembled. The destructive aura surged, destroying everything. Many of the mountains behind him were instantly flattened. Some of the buildings, halfway up the mountains, were turned to dust and disappeared. Among them, Piecer felt that there were treasures in a few places. He was so angry that he cried out. Sensing Piecer's boundless anger behind him, Chen finally stopped. He turned around and looked coldly at Piecer. Whoosh! Piecer approached in the blink of an eye. His eyes were like a poisonous snake's. He said angrily, "Run. Why did you stop running?" "Fine, then let's continue." With that, Chen turned and left. "Idiot, you can't leave." Piecer sped up, blocking Chen's path. He wanted to protect the area behind him. Just then, something strange happened in the ground. The divine patterns of the mountains and rivers were activated. A large black hand rushed out from the ground, grabbing at Piecer. Piecer snorted. The golden bell in his hand trembled and froze the hand. At this moment, Chen tapped the space between his eyebrows, and a golden sword light shot towards Piecer. "It's useless, you." Piecer's eyes were full of confidence and disdain. But before he could finish, the sword light was not frozen. Instead, it pierced through the divine patterns and flew towards his forehead. Puff! The divine pattern sword pierced through Piecer's body. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.